When in the Great Sea domain, Jian Wushuang had once been told by Zhen Wuyang, with his half-understanding, that it was due to luck that one could become an emperor. In fact, this statement was rather general. After all, how many emperors were there at that time? The Great Sea region was less than 1/10,000th of the original universe. Naturally, their knowledge was limited. Later, he came to understand what it meant to Tao merge. What it meant to be an emperor. After arriving at the 9 great spacetime, Jian Wushuang also understood what a universe master was. He was now already a universe master of the 7th Tribulation's realm. Actually, there was no specific division for universe masters. It was just this title of universe master. But the realms were divided in detail, based on the number of tribulations undergone. 9th Tribulations was the pinnacle. The more tribulations one underwent, the stronger they became. The universe master could be said to have reached the limit of this world. The starry sky gave birth to rivers, forming the long river of spacetime, with 4 subsidiary spacetimes. Within the long river of spacetime, those original universes were nurtured. An emperor who mastered the universe was a universe master. According to this calculation, mastering spacetime would make one a master of spacetime. Speaking of which, Realm King's realm was that of a master of spacetime. Mastering a spacetime, isn't that akin to being a god? But this had nothing to do with cultivators. Because cultivators simply could not master spacetime. Those initial speculations were all wrong. Is the universe master truly the end? Jian Wushuang looked up at the battle above the abyss. The 2 semigod beings were also at the level of universe masters. Their combat power had actually surpassed that of the gods of spacetime. When Danbao mastered the immortal divine temple, the power he unleashed was also at this level. If this was the end, it was quite boring. Thinking of this, he felt a bit lost. He had always been thinking about reaching the peak one day. Success after success, restart after restart. Now that he had reached the end, he felt somewhat unaccustomed. Realm King smiled lightly and said, "Yes and no. Please just say it directly." Jian Wushuang, feeling a bit down, couldn't help but say, seeing Realm King still trying to be mysterious, "The path of cultivation is the path of the cultivator. Perhaps one doesn't need others to set the path. They can walk it themselves." "Haha. I'm very pleased with your ambition." Realm King no longer hid it and said directly, "Above the universe master, there is indeed another realm, or rather, it's not a very certain realm, but many people have reached it. It is a realm where one has broken free from the supreme law rules." Upon hearing this, Hu Qing was not surprised but calmly said, "Universe God? Universe God." This time Realm King was very surprised, but after a moment, he understood why Hu Qing knew. "Was it the heavenly maiden who told you?" Hu Qing nodded in acknowledgement without saying much. Jian Wushuang, who was beside him, became interested and asked, "Universe God, what is the difference from the universe master? Is it just breaking free from the supreme law rules?" If this were the case, it was very similar to what he initially thought. Breaking through with sheer force. No wonder the peak existences of universe masters all followed the path of divine power. Perhaps it was also to break the highest rules. Divine status was not conferred but was attained through one's own strength. Literally, it is below the god of spacetime position, but stronger than the universe master. However, the battle power of the universe god is not as singular as the divine status. For instance, the Mia Shangyu encountered merely mastered the power of death. Even if he's a starry sky god, so what? Gods are too singular, and so is their battle power. Hence, he aimed to merge life and replace the position of the god of reincarnation. Realm King spoke helplessly. Actually, gods had already reached the pinnacle, so why pursue those extreme battle powers? Jian Wushuang finally understood this time. Under the starry sky, those who surpassed cultivators were always the divine statuses. Gods of starry sky, gods of spacetime. These positions were personally selected by the supreme law rules. For example, the god of life in the northern spacetime was chosen and then trained by Realm King. Dan Bao was the god of spacetime. Besides the god of spacetime, there was also Realm King. In fact, Theoretically, the power mastered by Realm King was not singular and could be said to be omnipotent. Unfortunately, the true form of the Northern Realm King had long fallen. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any threats, and they wouldn't need to seek help everywhere. God of Starry Sky. In fact, it wasn't much different from the God of Spacetime, only that they resided in different places. Naturally, the Starry Sky was stronger than Spacetime, so Miashang looked down upon the gods of Spacetime. Universe God. It sounded low-level, but its battle power could surpass that of the gods of Starry Sky. Because once a cultivator broke free from the supreme law rules, there was no upper limit. Divine status was a symbol of power and battle strength. Yet it was also a cage. Once you stepped onto it, you could never escape. Miashang did not hesitate to traverse spacetime to break the cage and advance further. Divine status held ruling power but also the fate of being bound. The universe god, however, was different. It had no upper limit. Jian Wushuang was quite excited. This was the path he pursued, the road he wanted to walk. An end? There was no such thing. Everyone had their own end, and his end was to surpass everyone. To become the strongest. That was the end. My path. Only I make the decisions. Realm King also saw Jian Wushuang's ambition, his expression shifting slightly, and thought secretly, perhaps, he can become a universe god. After all, even Wes highly regarded Jian Wushuang, and he had no reason not to. From his performance, Jian Wushuang was the most potential-laden cultivator in the entire northern spacetime. As Realm King, his vision was high, and he was proficient in all paths, capable of seeing through everything. In Jian Wushuang, he saw a path of cultivation never before seen. This was already a prerequisite for breaking the supreme law rules. Hu Qing. Let's get ready to move. After understanding the route of the universe master, he neither belittled himself nor indulged in fantasies, but aimed to walk each step well. The appearance of Bharat gave him a brand new understanding of divine status. The opponent controlled the divine realm and could even devour the origin source of subordinate spacetime. This was intolerable. Threatening the origin source of northern spacetime was equivalent to threatening themselves. The foundation of northern spacetime was linked to them. If northern spacetime were to shatter, not to mention reaching the Nine Tribulations realm, maintaining the current situation would be impossible. Therefore, Bharat had to die. Fortunately, they discovered the opponent's strangeness early on. Hu Qing, who grasped the heavenly Tao, thought far ahead and insisted on staying. Upon hearing Jian Wushuang's words, he also prepared slightly, ready to act at any moment. At this moment, high above the abyss, Jing Su had already firmly taken the upper hand, continuously suppressing Bharat. Had it not been for the decayed power from the abyss supplementing Bharat, he would have been killed long ago. Ha! The spear, like a lightning bolt, pierced through everything. Jing Su, with his towering god-demon form, wielded 6 broken spears, attacking frantically. He pierced Bharat's divine body multiple times, but could do nothing more, unable to kill him. Bharat, although continuously beaten, showed no signs of panic. Instead, he sneered, "Ha ha! Come on. Let's see if your divine power is more than the power of decay in the divine realm." He was absolutely confident. Jing Su's divine body was strong, but it could not withstand such consumption. However, Bharat could replenish himself infinitely. He was essentially imperishable. Too arrogant, Jing Su coldly shouted, and his 6 arms expanded once more, divine power pushing the limits of the universe master's capabilities each time. If it weren't for the divine suppression above, he would have already broken through to the highest law rules. The boundary of the northern spacetime was the 9th Tribulation realm. In the realm god continent, though it was said there were no boundaries in the divine realm, there were still the supreme law rules restraining it, making it impossible to break through to the extreme. Only by becoming a universe god could one achieve that. Jing Su's strength was formidable, ranking among the top 10 in the realm god continent's demigods. However, compared to a true universe god, he was far inferior. Even if he erupted again, reaching his peak state and shattering Bharat's divine body, he still could not kill him in one strike. At his peak, Bharat was also a demigod, and now fully recovered, he was even stronger than before. In the same rank, he was practically imperishable. Unless a universe god appeared, almost no one could kill him. To kill a peak demigod in one blow was incredibly difficult. Perhaps such a powerful being existed in the starry sky, but Realm King could not invite them. Such super beings would not care about the life and death of the affiliated spacetime. The affiliated spacetime was originally a desolate world, and without the decree of a major figure in the starry sky, the 4 major affiliated spacetimes would not even have life. Therefore, in the starry sky, the presence of the affiliated spacetimes was very low. It was only the practitioners within the spacetimes who often mentioned the 4 major affiliated spacetimes. This was why Mieshang dared to traverse the spacetime so recklessly, entering the affiliated spacetimes to ambush the gods of spacetime, because they simply did not fear. In their eyes, even Realm King was nothing. Realm King managed the affiliated spacetime, but it had nothing to do with them. Only if a Realm King had exceptionally strong personal combat power would they earn some respect. Unfortunately, the Northern Realm King's true self had fallen, leaving no combat power. In the eyes of those strong beings in the starry sky, he was a waste. No one respected him. This was the sorrow of the Northern Realm King. When you think about it, he was a tragic figure, not only having to develop the northern spacetime but also protecting it from the strong beings of other spacetimes. Even his true self had fallen. His journey had not been easy. Realm King, let me handle this. Jian Wushuang silently vowed, his aura suddenly erupting. He shouted angrily, "Now enter the abyss!" Whoosh! Without waiting for Realm King's response, he and Hu Qing instantly disappeared, reappearing within the abyss. Down below, buzz. Hu Qing took the lead, pointing to the depths of the abyss and said, "The origin source swallowed by the divine realm is down there. We must get closer." All right. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate and immediately rushed down. Realm King outside the abyss finally reacted, realizing that Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing had both entered the abyss. He hurriedly sent a message, "Are you too crazy? That's the core of the abyss. If you go in, there won't even be bones left of you." Realm King was anxious. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing were highly potential practitioners of the northern spacetime, future pillars of the northern spacetime. They must not fall due to the strong beings from other spacetimes. If they fell because of this, it would be a huge loss and his dereliction of duty. Jingsu, don't hold back anymore. Kill Barut quickly. He couldn't stop them and could only pin his hopes on Jingsu, urging him to kill Barut quickly. Jingsu originally wanting to probe a bit more, but when he heard Northern Realm King's words, also noticed Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing entering the abyss. He didn't understand but didn't think much of it. The divine demon form vanished in an instant, reverting to the appearance of a child, with a small obtuse tower appearing in his hand. Holding the tower in one hand, his expression turned solemn. The extreme light tower. Seeing the small tower in Jingsu's hand, Realm King and Barut couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. The reputation of this treasure was too immense. That aura made all cultivators tremble with fear. Even the Realm King couldn't help but shrink his neck. Barut, who had been quite indifferent, was so frightened that he quickly retreated, not even bothering to pay attention to Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing entering the abyss. Although he didn't know what these two intended to do, they couldn't threaten him. And they certainly couldn't threaten the abyss. He didn't care about devouring the origin sources of 2 more cultivators. But the extreme light tower posed a significant threat to him. Even now, possessing the divine realm, he dared not be careless. "I didn't expect that to deal with me. The great Realm King would lend you the extreme light tower." Barut frowned, privately transmitting a message to a super existence supporting him. Though the super strong in the starry sky didn't think much of these Realm Kings, the great Realm King was different. In the entire Realm God continent, he ranked among the top 3 super existences. Besides the Realm King God, among the 4 subsidiary spacetime and the Realm God continent, the great Realm King held the highest divine position. He stood above the 4 major Realm Kings, and his original body's combat power was incredibly formidable. He had once killed a universe god from the starry sky. Using this very extreme light tower, a single strike to kill. From then on, he was deified in a single battle. In the past, the great realm king had a reputation for being gentle, humble, and non-competitive, always going with the flow. But even such a kind person had moments of anger. Back then, when the realm god continent gave birth to a starry sky-level secret realm, it attracted super strong from the starry sky to explore. Among them were several universe gods. These universe gods looked down on the gods of spacetime and sealed off the starry sky secret realm of the realm god continent, allowing only the strong from the starry sky to explore. This action greatly displeased the strong of the realm god continent and the 4 major spacetimes, but no one dared to object. Because there were few universe gods on the realm god continent, and their strength was lacking. Many universe gods on the realm god continent also came from the starry sky. Since their interests weren't harmed, they wouldn't stand up for justice. At this point, the great realm king and the other 4 realm kings had not taken action. They couldn't, as their strength was insufficient, and they couldn't blame others for that. But the few universe gods from the starry sky became more and more excessive. Not only did they occupy the starry sky secret realm birthed by the realm god continent, but they also seized some sect forces from the realm god continent. All who resisted were annihilated, everything suppressed. Unbelievably arrogant. At that time, the young North Realm King couldn't stand it and took action, trying to drive away those universe gods from the starry sky. But his strength was insufficient. The Northern Spacetime was the last to be born, and the North Realm King's strength was the weakest. In terms of combat power, he was at most comparable to a universe god. But he had to face several universe gods from the starry sky, who had broken through countless eras. There was no limit to the terror of a universe god. The Northern Realm King was still too young and believed that no matter how excessive the other party was, they wouldn't dare to kill him. He hadn't expected that his temporal origin source would be abolished directly by the other party, and his divine body shattered. Only a single strand of will was left to him. He could still manage the northern spacetime, but he could no longer cultivate. It was because of this incident that the great realm king erupted completely. He fought tirelessly, seeking vengeance for the northern realm king. With the extreme light tower in hand, he swiftly killed the god of spacetime who had ruined the northern realm king. All other participating universe gods had their origin source shattered. This battle shocked the entire starry sky. From then on, those universe gods no longer dared to be arrogant on the realm god continent. Even if they went to the realm god continent, they were extremely low-key. When the northern realm king saw that extreme light tower again, he couldn't help but recall the past, tears streaming down his aged face. Everything could never go back to how it was. Without his true body, he became depressed and melancholy. Later, the great realm king promised that once the northern spacetime was completely stabilized and enough universe gods were born, he would plead with the realm king to reconstruct a true body for him. Sigh! The northern realm king couldn't help but sigh. From then on, the great realm king took special care of him. He even obtained the Wanlu divine tree from Weiss to enhance the life level of the northern spacetime, allowing it to give birth to a 9th tribulation earlier. With a 9th tribulation realm, a subsequent enhancement would allow the birth of universe gods. The realm king had been striving for this promise all along. He was truly resilient despite his physical disability. However, as a realm king without a true body, he was constantly bullied by powerful beings from different spacetime. Now, they even wanted to destroy his northern spacetime. He had no choice but to seek help from the great realm king. Unexpectedly, this time, the great realm king went all out and directly handed over the extreme light tower to his direct disciple, Jingsu, to help him through the crisis. Although the great realm king's combat power was immense, there were still some powerful beings in the starry sky or realm god continent that he feared, such as the existence behind Barut. This was why the great realm king did not take action himself and sent his disciple instead. With the extreme light tower, it was enough. No wonder you're so confident. Barut couldn't help but take half a step back, standing above the abyss, and continued, "But even so, what can you do?" Jingsu was taken aback. "What? Could it be that you really intend to kill me?" Barut sneered. "Tisk tsk. You'll understand soon enough." At this moment, The Northern Realm King suddenly thought of something, his face turning grim. Haha, the power of decay I've devoured is about enough. I can retreat unscathed now. Bharat turned to look at the Northern Realm King, mocking. This time you're lucky. I'll take half for now, but sooner or later, I'll devour your entire northern spacetime and kill all the human race. Looking at the other party's arrogant expression, the Realm King was helpless, because the Great Realm King had just transmitted a message to him, ordering him to release Bharat. There was no choice. The other party's background was too powerful. Even the Great Realm King had to compromise. Jing Su, let him go. The Realm King's face was somewhat embarrassed. He turned his head and glanced at Bharat again, coldly saying, However, before you leave, release the 2 practitioners from the abyss. Bharat's mouth curved into a smile, only now remembering that there were still 2 foolish practitioners trapped in the abyss. 2 universe masters were nothing. Even though they had previously erupted with divine power surpassing 20 million, they posed no threat. Whether to release them or not was a matter of a single thought. This favor he could choose not to give. What if I don't release them? Bharat said with a teasing expression. Not only will they die, but I will also kill all the practitioners in the mid-tier spacetime. Consider that as interest. The Realm King clenched his fists tightly, his expression extremely dark. But he could do nothing. This was a form of torture for him. Seeing the Realm King in immense distress, Bharat smiled. The more painful his opponent was, the more excited he became. Jing Su stood to the side at a loss. Originally, his master had instructed him to follow the Northern Realm King to slay Bharat. Now, however, they were to let him go. Moreover, Bharat's extremely arrogant demeanor made him very unhappy. At this moment, he couldn't help but inquire through telepathy, Master, why did you let Bharat go? Give me 3 breaths' time, and I could have killed him. The realm god continent was vast and majestic. To call it a continent was an understatement. It was more like an extraordinarily perfect world. It was neither space-time nor a universe. Above the heavens and beneath the earth it spanned vast territories. It was just one world, yet it could surpass space-time and the universe. This was the realm god continent crafted by the Realm King God. The location of Nantian Mansion was situated within a star domain in the southern part of the realm god continent. To call it a star domain was actually to describe a universe sea connected by countless universes. In this place, there were countless universes, all of which were the origin universes of universe masters. Among them, one particularly dazzling universe was known as the Hunyuan universe. It was the brightest universe in the entire star domain, because its owner was a universe god. Having already reached the status of a universe god, the Origin Source universe could have long been incorporated into his divine body, yet its owner did not do so, leaving the Origin Source universe casually placed there. This demonstrated absolute confidence, not needing to carry the Origin Source Tao Arena wherever he went. And its owner indeed had such strength. Looking across the entire realm god continent, he was nearly invincible. Even in the starry sky he had few opponents. He was the strongest practitioner to emerge from the 4 spacetimes, and was also the future successor of the Realm King God. Zamasu. He came from the southern spacetime as a universe god, and was the pride of the southern spacetime, because a super-existence had emerged from the spacetime he controlled, and he was the future Realm King God, making the Realm King of the southern spacetime extremely proud. Compared to the Northern Realm King, it was like heaven and earth. A universe god emerging from spacetime had even brought the great Realm King to personally visit. One could only imagine the strength and background of this person, which surpassed that of the Realm King. Even the Realm King God valued him highly. It was rare for the great Realm King to personally visit and plead. In the depths of the Hunyuan universe, within a simple wooden courtyard, the great Realm King and Zamasu sat on the ground, drinking tea. Zamasu, the great Realm King said with a gentle expression, "Your strength is growing stronger by the day. It's certain that you will become the Realm King God in the future. Why do you insist on targeting the small northern spacetime?" He couldn't understand. As the chosen one, Zamasu, the future realm king god, with immense divine power and authority, supported by the old realm king god, repeatedly plotted against the northern spacetime. The metal life form in the Wanlu divine tree was one instance. Miashang was also related to him, followed by Bharat now. The investment of resources and manpower was enormous. Yet these people were all interested in the northern spacetime. Those who weren't interested, Zamasu would create interest. Could be said he went to great lengths. If the Wanlu divine tree was a coincidence, then attracting Miashang to the northern spacetime was a conspiracy. Arranging for Bharat to enter the northern spacetime and creating a divine domain was blatant persecution. Each time, the actions were vicious, aiming to completely destroy all life in the northern spacetime. Zamasu himself had his limits. He knew that the existence of the subsidiary spacetime was to maintain the stability of the starry sky and dared not destroy the entire northern spacetime. However, there was no concern about annihilating the human race in the northern spacetime. The only one protecting the northern spacetime was the great Realm King, whom Zamasu dared to offend. Realm King, aren't your words a bit too arbitrary? Zamasu's expression paused as he looked up at the great Realm King. You can help the Northern Realm King, and I naturally will help my own friend. Miasheng wanted to advance further. I merely gave him some guidance. His erasure by Lord Weiss was deserved and had nothing to do with me. The matter of the Wanlu Divine Tree was indeed arranged by me, but you should also know the Wanlu Divine Tree hadn't appeared for many years. I arranged for a friend to contend for the opportunity. Isn't that quite normal? Moreover, Lord Weiss did not stop it. The only one Zamasu feared was a star spirit. Weiss was one of the 12 star spirits. Although his title was similar to the Realm King God, his combat power was terrifying, even surpassing the Realm King God. Even Zamasu had to show utmost respect when meeting him. And what about Bharat? Great Realm King's eyebrows slightly furrowed. The divine domain you crafted is so precious. If it truly needed to devour an origin source, why not devour the secret sealm instead of the origin source of the northern spacetime? Zamasu took a deep breath and calmly replied, I've already said, it was to help a friend. As for the divine domain, although it's somewhat special, to me it's just ordinary. Giving it away was no big deal. The persecution of the northern spacetime doesn't count. It's merely that Bharat happened to need the origin source of the northern spacetime. He had distanced himself from the matter neatly. Don't ask. If asked, it was for helping out. He had little to do with it. The Northern Realm King once made sacrifices for the Realm God continent. I don't want you to go to such extremes. This time, I will give the Realm King God some face. But there should not be a next time. The great Realm King downed his tea in one gulp, then stood up to leave. Zamasu's eyelids lifted as he rolled his eyes, speaking in a sarcastic tone. So, you mean that next time you'll take action against me? You could say that. Great Realm King stopped in his tracks, slowly turned around, and a murderous look appeared in his eyes. I don't know what the Realm King God is thinking, choosing you as the next Realm King God. But before you become the Realm King God, you are not qualified to meddle so far. Ha ha! Zamasu couldn't help but laugh, then slowly stood up and provocatively said, Actually, I've never believed your strength to be that formidable. Now that you've lost the extreme light tower, I wonder how much power you have left. Great Realm King's expression changed as he sneered. You can try. Buzz. The Hunyuan universe erupted instantly. Two super beings standing at the peak of spacetime and the starry sky clashed fiercely. The power they unleashed was nearly equal, but Zamasu was more aggressive. The great Realm King had deep foundations. Let's end it here today. Zamasu's face grew increasingly grim as he fell into a disadvantage after exchanging several blows. And this was the great Realm King without the extreme light tower. If he had the extreme light tower, he might have been able to kill Zamasu. It was merely a probe from the start. Neither of them intended to kill. However, Zamasu had already used 90% of his strength and still wasn't a match. Great Realm King wanted to seize this opportunity to teach Zamasu a lesson. Before stopping, he unleashed a full-power energy wave, creating a dazzling beam that pierced through the entire Hunyuan universe. You! Zamasu felt a massive threat. Facing the energy wave, an evil glint appeared in his eyes, and his power surged. His green skin burst open. He seemed to transform completely, raising his hand to send the Great Realm King's energy beam back. Great Realm King's face darkened upon sensing the evil aura. He was stunned for a moment, and the beam he had just unleashed was now in front of him. Boom! He had to cross his arms to block it, forcibly stopping it. Your power is a bit strange. Zamasu sneered. Strange? It's not for you to question. Unable to resist an outburst just now, he was discovered by the other party. If he used that power, he should be able to take down the current Great Realm King. Unfortunately, this was the Realm God continent, and he was not yet the Realm King God. Killing a Great Realm King would be too risky for him, so he suppressed his killing intent. The Great Realm King stared intently at Zamasu. I will keep a close eye on you. He pointed at his own eyes with his fingers, then disappeared directly into the Hunyuan universe. You ignorant old fool! Zamasu sneered coldly. The day I become the Realm King God will be the day you fall. By then, the Extreme Light Tower will also be mine. The clash between Zamasu and the Great Realm King was a contest in the northern spacetime. After their confrontation, the Great Realm King also transmitted a message to the Northern Realm King and his disciple Jingsu, informing them that Bharat could leave. At this time, Jingsu transmitted a message to inquire further, but he didn't know how to respond and could only sigh. Forget it. Let him go. Although Jingsu was unwilling, he dared not disobey his master's orders. As for the Northern Realm King, he had already troubled the Great Realm King enough this time and did not want to make more demands. In his heart, he could only pray silently, Jian Wushuang, you must not fall so easily. In the abyss, Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing had already entered deep within, unaware that the outside had already ceased fighting. Moreover, Zamasu and the Great Realm King had chosen to make peace, meaning the crisis was now resolved. If Jian Wushuang knew this, he might have retreated, as there was no more danger to face. Hu Qing, why is it so quiet outside? The abyss is still operating, and Bharat hasn't stopped. I'm afraid. Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed, and he exclaimed, You calculated it correctly. Jingsu really didn't capture Bharat. It looks like we still have to rely on ourselves outside. Let's begin. Hu Qing spread his hands, and terrifying divine power began to erupt. This place was the devouring origin source of the abyss. They would release all the origin source, pushing the abyss to its limit to overwhelm Bharat. If he liked devouring so much, they would let him devour to his heart's content. Back at the Qishan Temple, Jian Wushuang had also devoured countless entities, fully understanding the pitfalls of devouring. Once it reached the limit, one must stop, or else the divine body and origin source would explode. Super eternal ancient transformation. Jian Wushuang crossed his arms and lifted them sharply, his divine power instantly surpassing 20 million. In the abyss, there were still no restrictions, and with his own origin source Tao Arena, he directly pushed his divine power to the limit. The count reached 25 million. The origin sources of the three perfect universes also erupted with boundless origin source power, continuously flowing into the devouring origin source within the abyss. Buzz. Sensing the proactively approaching origin source, the abyss began to devour it madly. To it, this was simply a delicacy. Above the abyss, Bharat was stunned. He hadn't actively devoured Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, yet these two fools revealed their origin source themselves, standing there to be devoured. Offering themselves to death? He couldn't help but show a smile on his face, mocking the Realm King. This time, don't say I didn't give you face. They are offering themselves to death, I think? Before he finished speaking, Bharat's smile froze on his face. His body also uncontrollably expanded at that moment. Realm King was also stunned, not knowing what was happening. But he could see that Bharat's divine power was continuously rising, already touching the level of a universe god. In an instant, his divine power doubled, making Bharat's figure grow larger by a circle. How is this possible? Bharut's eyes were filled with disbelief, unable to believe the power he had just devoured and absorbed. In just an instant, cracks appeared on his divine body. At this moment, Jingsu saw the problem, pointing at Bharut with one hand and clutching his stomach with the other, laughing. "Don't you like to eat? This time it seems you've eaten too much." "It's Jian Wushuang." Realm King also reacted, showing joy. "Bharut, this time it's your bad luck." With his divine body fused with the devouring origin source in the abyss, Bharut could only be forced to absorb the continuously incoming power, his face turning purple. Clearly, he had reached his limit. Whoosh! He flashed and directly entered the abyss. He wanted to kill Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. "You deserve to die!" Bharut shouted madly, forming a colorful light ball with one hand and continuously throwing it into the abyss. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing in the abyss hurriedly dodged, but all the attacks fell into the devouring origin source, ultimately feeding back to Bharut, making his divine body explode even more severely. Jian Wushuang sneered, looking up at the embarrassed Bharut. "Stop wasting your efforts. If you really kill me, my origin source will directly merge into the devouring origin source. By then, you will surely die. If I don't take action, I might still fall." Bharut could barely speak, no longer having the strength to attack. Although he had boundless power, he was now like a bloated universe with divine power but unable to use it because all his power was suppressing itself, not daring to be displayed. One careless move, and this bloated universe would explode. Out of options, Bharut could only send a message to Zamasu for help. "How long can you hold on?" Jian Wushuang's cold eyes stared at him, releasing the power from the origin source again to feed the devouring origin source. Hu Qing also pushed his future self to the limit, almost diving headfirst into the devouring origin source. "Ah!" Bharut went completely mad, absorbing more power in the abyss, unable to stop, and could only escape the abyss. Realm King, who had been somewhat worried, sighed in relief seeing Bharut fly out of the abyss. In the abyss, Hu Qing looked at Jian Wushuang and said, "Brother Wushuang, Bharut has lost his defensive ability. Now he just needs one more push. Shall we go out and fight?" "Virtuous." This time Jian Wushuang clasped his hands together, wrapped Hu Qing in his thought power, and forcefully left the abyss using universe super travel. With a swift motion, he appeared above the abyss once more. Clang! Jian Wushuang drew the Wanjia sword, its blue blade pointing towards Bharut. "Today you must die." He intended to kill Bharut. At this moment, Bharut was utterly panicked. Realm King without his true form posed no threat to him, and Jingsu was the great Realm King's man. It was evident that the great Realm King and Zamasu had ceased their actions and wouldn't intervene. But who could stop Jian Wushuang if he wanted to kill him? A native cultivator from the northern spacetime killing a threat from another spacetime. The heavenly Tao was not on his side. "You can't kill me." Bharut retreated frantically, threatening, "I belong to Zamasu. If you kill me and go to the Realm God continent, you will have no place to stay." Jian Wushuang, however, treated these words as mere background noise, completely unconcerned. Did he have few enemies? Back then, the metallic life forms had threatened him similarly. What happened afterward? The threat wasn't visible for the moment. According to the Realm King, they were also taken to the Realm God continent. And then there was the threat from Shilu also on the Realm God continent. What else did he have to fear? Zamasu? He had heard of him but had never feared him. Space-time. Reincarnation. Jian Wushuang roared consecutively, and the Wanjia sword emitted an incredibly terrifying sword cry. It thirsted for blood. At this moment, his Wanjia sword had an insatiable desire. A desire for the taste of blood. His intent to kill had also reached its peak. Even if the King of Heaven came today, he wouldn't be able to stop him. Buzz! The sword shadow shot up to the clouds, following the tip of the sword, opening space-time, forging reincarnation. With one sword, he sealed your past and present lives, leaving no possibility of reincarnation. This was sword move, space-time reincarnation. Swish! The The sword shadow covered the entire middle spacetime. This sword had already touched the level of major achievement. Originally at the entry level, it had astonishingly risen 2 levels. This was the beauty of battle. It could always bring unexpected gains, and the sudden breakthrough filled Jian Wushuang's eyes with joy. The sword shadow tore through spacetime, directly striking towards Barut. If it had been Barut at his peak, this sword strike couldn't have killed him. But now, Barut, swollen to the brink of bursting, couldn't resist at all. Even a slight attack could lead to his downfall. Zamasu, save me. In his desperation, Barut could only call out Zamasu's name. Don't mention Zamasu. Even if Whis came, he couldn't save you. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate, his killing intent soaring. He had to eliminate him. Although he didn't care about verbal threats, living threats mattered to him. If he could eliminate them, he would. Keeping them around would only cause trouble for himself. So from the start, he didn't hold back, launching a full-force attack aimed at killing. Barut, facing this sword, had no power to resist. He could only transmit his despairing message to Zamasu. If I fall, your divine realm will also fall into the northern spacetime. By then, the human race will grow even stronger. On the realm god continent, originally indifferent to Barut's life or death, Zamasu stood up upon hearing this message. He rubbed the ring on his hand, frowning slightly. What a useless fool! The ring burst into a rainbow light, and Zamasu's figure vanished from the Hunyuan universe. Buzz! At the same time, a rainbow light appeared in the abyssal spacetime. A figure slowly rose from the abyss. The newcomer was Zamasu. He single-handedly blocked Jian Wushuang's most powerful sword strike. However, it was just an incarnation. His true self was outside of the northern spacetime. As a universe god, he couldn't enter lower spacetime. The divine power of the incarnation, although only 20 million, was enough to save Barut. Who are you? Jian Wushuang looked at the figure, recalling the carving in the formation of the City of the Sky. It looked very similar. While he was astonished, Jingsu and Realm King shouted the name in unison. Zamasu. Hearing this name, Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing began to scrutinize him closely. This was not the first time they had heard the name Zamasu. Every time there was a threat to the northern spacetime, this person was behind it. Seeing him this time, there was nothing particularly special. An incarnation, 20 million divine power. That's it. At this moment, Realm King reminded through thought power, don't underestimate him. This is an affiliated spacetime. As a universe god, entering an affiliated spacetime means being restricted by the supreme law rules again, which makes his divine power seem very weak. If he were on the realm god continent, he could kill a demigod with a mere breath. So strong. Jian Wushuang found it hard to believe. Don't doubt my words. We can't afford to provoke him. Realm King sighed. The more he said this, the more Jian Wushuang wanted to try. Why couldn't they provoke him? When he was an emperor, he dared to oppose the starry sky god Mieshang, and managed to escape from him multiple times. Now, as a universe master of the 7th tribulation realm, there was nothing to fear. He looked at Zamasu recklessly. Brother Wushuang, it's better to be careful. Zamasu has a special power that we are far from being able to match. Hu Qing also shook his head in dissuasion. That aura was too overwhelming. Jian Wushuang nodded and did not act rashly. However, he had already made it clear that no matter who came today, it wouldn't matter. Zamasu hovered in mid-air, ignoring everyone. He glanced at the continuously expanding Barut, his expression cold. Trash! Whoosh! He raised his hand, forcibly wrapping Barut in a thought force, intending to take him away. Jian Wushuang stepped forward, blocking his way. Trying to leave? His action startled Realm King. There was no time to stop him. Jingsu also held his breath. Although he was a disciple of the great Realm King and a pinnacle existence among demigods, in front of a giant like Zamasu, he was like an ant. Seeing Jian Wushuang daring to block a peak universe god, he secretly admired his courage. Perhaps this was the fearlessness of the ignorant. Ha! Zamasu was also amused by Jian Wushuang's stance. After glancing at him seriously, he frowned. Boy, are you talking to me? Jian Wushuang didn't feel anything wrong. Bharat was about to destroy the northern spacetime, so he stepped in to stop him. Wasn't that the right thing to do? Like I said, today he must stay. This time, Realm King finally had a chance to intervene. He hurriedly rushed over, blocking Jian Wushuang. Looking at Zamasu, he softened his tone. Lord Zamasu, he hasn't been to the Realm God continent yet and doesn't know your identity. Please be lenient. Tisk, TSK. This just shows that your northern spacetime is full of talents. So arrogant without even having been to the Realm God continent. If he had been, would he have directly attacked me? Zamasu glanced sideways at the Northern Realm King, not taking him seriously at all. Even so, Realm King endured it and hastily apologized. Keep your dog on a leash. There won't be a next time. If not for the lack of other manifestations, he would have killed Jian Wushuang long ago. Or rather, if he encountered Jian Wushuang on the Realm God continent in the future, he would kill him. He already detested humans, and now being reprimanded by a human cultivator was a great humiliation for him. Without another glance, he prepared to leave with Bharat. Zamasu had his pride. So did Jian Wushuang. He had never been humiliated like this before. Ignoring Realm King's obstruction, he directly attacked Zamasu. This Zamasu was merely an avatar, with limited divine power. How strong could he be? Life! The perfect life sword move struck out directly. Buzz! Zamasu didn't expect Jian Wushuang to dare to attack him. With a single hand, he released a wave of energy, directly blocking the sword. Jian Wushuang! Realm King shouted, but this time he did not intervene. Even a cultivator knew about dignity. He was, after all, Realm King of the Northern Spacetime. Why did Jian Wushuang attack now? To save face for the Northern Spacetime. If he intervened again, how would he face the Realm God continent in the future? Besides, Jingsu was standing nearby. If word got out, he would be disgraced. Although his reputation was already mediocre. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, glanced at Realm King, and then stared at Zamasu, saying, Maybe one day I will bow to you gods, but it won't be today. As soon as he finished speaking, he attacked again. Time and space converged once more. This time, Zamasu wanted to block it but couldn't, because his manifestation's divine power was almost depleted. He had initially intended to use his status to forcibly take Bharat away from the Northern Spacetime, but he didn't expect to be stopped by a universe master at the 7th tribulation level like Jian Wushuang. At this moment, his expression was somewhat embarrassed. As a universe god and future successor of Realm King God, he disdained making threats. He simply gave Jian Wushuang a clear look and dissolved his avatar. Bharat's fall meant nothing to him. Even if the divine domain was lost, it didn't matter. He just didn't want humans to gain a treasure for nothing. Zamasu, just left like that? Jingsu in the distance couldn't believe it. Zamasu, who was so domineering on the Realm God continent, had been humbled in the Northern Spacetime by a 7th tribulation universe master. If this got out, those universe gods on the Realm God continent wouldn't believe it. Zamasu didn't even give the great Realm King face, extremely arrogant and ruthless. Yet, he bowed his head in the Northern Spacetime. Seeing Zamasu leave voluntarily, Realm King also breathed a sigh of relief. But the words Jian Wushuang had just spoken made his aura surge. For a moment he felt proud. In his youth, he had also been this glorious, but he couldn't defeat time in the end. At this moment, Bharat was in despair. Even Zamasu couldn't protect him. Now he could only await death. Feelings of unwillingness filled him. His eyes glared at Jian Wushuang. You will regret this. Regret. Everyone has regrets, it all depends on one's mindset. Jian Wushuang also had regrets, but he didn't dwell on them. It only made him a bit more burdened. What did this matter? Perhaps. He faced Bharat calmly and said, Maybe one day I will regret this, but not today. He had already offended Zamasu, and today Bharat was destined to fall. The space-time reincarnation sword directly crushed the expanding Bharat, turning his divine body into dust and completely obliterating his soul. He was utterly annihilated. No one could save Bharat. With Bharat's demise, the devouring origin source in the abyss became masterless. The bat-like desolate beasts were drawn back to the devouring origin source in the abyss. The devoured power of the origin source also returned to the entire mid-level spacetime at that moment. This crisis was considered resolved. However, the power that Bharat had absorbed entered Jian Wushuang's reincarnation. Jian Wushuang, can you handle it? Realm King was a bit worried. After all, Bharat at his peak was a demigod, and the absorbed power of the origin source was something that ordinary ninth tribulation cultivators couldn't withstand. Now this origin source was being devoured again. Devoured by Jian Wushuang's spacetime reincarnation. However, Jian Wushuang could control his devouring power, absorbing when he wanted and stopping when he didn't. He had none of Bharat's drawbacks. Realm King, about the abyssal divine domain? As he absorbed the power of the origin source that Bharat had absorbed, he asked about the abyssal divine domain. This matter had not yet been explained by Realm King. Why did Bharat come to the northern spacetime? Because of Zamasu? Realm King sighed and explained, I don't know much about Zamasu either, but this abyssal divine domain should be modeled after the abyss created by the Realm King God. The mid-level abyssal spacetime was created by the Realm King God. Zamasu brought Bharat to the northern spacetime along with the divine domain, probably because of the abyssal spacetime. If you have time, you can go to the abyssal spacetime. It might be helpful to you. The abyssal spacetime. Jian Wushuang nodded. He had long suspected that Bharat's abyssal divine domain had some connection with the abyssal spacetime. Now hearing the Realm King's explanation, he understood. Bharat's abyssal divine domain was created by Zamasu, while the mid-level abyssal spacetime was created by the Realm King God. Perhaps this was why they targeted the northern spacetime. His thinking was simple, purely for profit. But he didn't understand that Zamasu's hatred for the northern spacetime, and even for the human race, was far more than just profit. The abyssal divine domain was also built to rival the abyssal spacetime created by Realm King God, the core of the northern spacetime. The aim was to show an outstanding performance and take over the position of the Realm King God sooner. Phew! The power that Bharat had absorbed, if not entering the spacetime reincarnation, wouldn't return to the origin source of the mid-level spacetime, which meant he benefited from it. Infinite power, all compressed into the origin source of the starry sky. This power was enough to double his origin source. At least it would light up 3 more universes. By then, he would almost be at the peak of the 7th tribulation. The distance to the 8th tribulation was not far. Repeated life and death opportunities allowed Jian Wushuang's growth to bear fruit. If he weren't in a hurry to return to Qishan Temple, he might have had the chance to break through to the 8th tribulation within 10 epochs. However, now that Wuxia had already taken people back to the low-level spacetimes, they couldn't delay any longer. Realm King, there's nothing more here. Hu Qing and I will take our leave. Wait! Realm King took out a ring from his pocket and smiled, saying, Bharat was killed by you, and the abyssal divine domain left behind naturally belongs to you. Keep it. Jian Wushuang was somewhat puzzled as to why he was being given this ring. As for the abyssal divine domain, he hadn't even thought about it. He only wanted to understand the secrets behind the divine domain. Now that he knew Zamasu was behind it, there was no research value left. He didn't dare to think about obtaining this super treasure. Don't overthink it. This treasure is useless to me. Realm King patted Jian Wushuang on the shoulder. Focus on your cultivation. You don't need to worry about the matters of the Realm God continent. Jian Wushuang was stunned for a moment, then understood. This abyssal divine domain was created by Zamasu. Once it appeared on the Realm God continent, Zamasu could take it away at any time. Now they had thoroughly offended Zamasu, so they might as well keep this treasure. Since Jian Wushuang had killed Bharat, it was most appropriate to give it to him. Understanding this, he did not refuse. After putting on the ring, he pointed a finger and stored the ownerless divine domain into the ring. He was not Bharat, who did not have an origin source. Thus, he treated the divine domain as his origin source, attempting to expand it to perfection and become a god himself. Such a god could be considered a false god. However, their combat power was much stronger than a demigod's. This was also the promise Zamasu had made to Bharat. Jian Wushuang, having the starry sky origin source, did not need to treat the divine domain as his origin source, but he could use it as a supreme treasure of the domain. Once unleashed, it could cover the entire spacetime, and everyone within would be without restrictions. It was indeed a good treasure. However, this domain would be ineffective against a starry sky god like Mieshang. On the contrary, it could even implicate himself. Without restrictions, he would at most have 25 divine power. But without restrictions, Mieshang, he could likely shatter the abyssal divine domain. This treasure needed further exploration and refinement, and couldn't be used lightly. Then I'll accept it. After accepting the abyssal divine domain and bidding farewell to the Realm King, he left the Nianshan secret realm with Hu Qing. Without the divine domain, the Nianshan secret realm began to break apart. It scattered into various cosmic secret realms, drifting everywhere. Among them was a scorched land, the former Moro spacetime. Bharat probably had schemes in the former Moro spacetime as well. It's a pity he died too easily. And there's no chance to learn some of the secrets of the former Moro spacetime. Jian Wushuang felt a bit regretful. When Bharat was killed, only big figures appeared. No one would care about a Moro spacetime. Even if he asked directly, they wouldn't tell him. With the Nianshan secret realm shattered, and no spacetime origin source to support it, these cosmic-level secret realms would no longer be a threat. This period would also be an explosive time for mid-level spacetimes. Countless strong beings would rise from this. But this had nothing to do with them anymore. Whoosh! Passing by the ruins of Moro spacetime, Hu Qing couldn't help but collect the scorched land left by Moro spacetime. Perhaps it might be of some help to Qishan Temple. Hu Qing carefully put it away. According to his calculations, this scorched land had some causal connection with Qishan Temple. Taking it along wouldn't cost anything, so why not? Jian Wushuang said nothing more, leaving the Nianshan secret realm but not heading directly to the lower reaches of spacetime. Because there was one more thing to solve. It wasn't a big deal. Just visiting an old acquaintance. The giant god clan, Xin Ling Frelesa, and Fuego, who had resurrected in the Three King Court. It was said they were now universe masters of the 8th Tribulation Realm. Even Frelesa had reached the 7th Tribulation Realm, his cultivation speed no slower than theirs. It should be noted that Frelesa back then was just an ordinary Tribulation Realm, and Fuego had recovered to the 6th Tribulation Realm because of his life force. From the 6th Tribulation Realm to the 8th Tribulation Realm, it seemed like only 2 tribulations apart, but some people could be stuck here for a lifetime. Frelesa breaking through from the 1st Tribulation Realm to the 7th Tribulation Realm was already terrifying. No wonder they were the first group in the starry sky. The entire giant god clan of the northern spacetime probably had no more than 2 digits, and almost all of them could reach the 7th Tribulation Realm or higher. This kind of potential was indeed heaven-defying. Moreover, they had not yet returned to their homeland. Once they returned to the starry sky, they could quickly improve again. No wonder they became the first group. Thinking of past encounters with them, Jian Wushuang smiled lightly. The speed of the two was extremely fast, not inferior to the pyramid. Now, Jian Wushuang could fully exert speed beyond the universe master level. Continuously traversing through spacetime, they quickly arrived at the location Frelesa mentioned. The abyss spacetime, the most powerful spacetime in the middle level. They didn't yet know that this spacetime was created by an extraordinary being for the northern spacetime, serving as the foundation of the northern spacetime. Not to mention the middle-tier spacetime, it was the most powerful spacetime in the entire northern spacetime. Swish! Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing appeared, and from a distance, they felt a familiar aura. Before they could move forward, Frelesa and others had already approached. Jian Wushuang. From a great distance, a familiar voice was heard. Lord Frelesa, Jian Wushuang teased. Back then, he had called the other party Lord Shenling for a long time. Meeting again, the two were already at the same level, and Jian Wushuang was much stronger than the other. The once so-called divine spirit Frelesa was not too surprised. He had always felt that Jian Wushuang would sooner or later become super strong. Surpassing him was not an issue. After all, he had mastered the power of life early on, and even as a Tao Lord, he could rival ordinary tribulation realm cultivators. To call him a heaven-defying Tao Lord was not an exaggeration. Hearing Jian Wushuang's address, Frelace's face froze for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "Just call me Frelace. Now you are stronger than me. The strong are respected. That's how it is." Jian Wushuang had no discomfort and talked calmly with the other party. This time, in dealing with Barut, the other party also helped a lot by letting Wuxia and others leave in advance. Otherwise, there would still be some danger. After chatting for a while, Immortal Lord Zhuyang and others also arrived. There was also Fuego, who had devoured by Junwang back then. Jian Wushuang did not speak, just waved a greeting, then looked at Immortal Lord Zhuyang. "According to what Frelace said, you know a lot about abyssal spacetime?" This time, coming to see Frelace was not just a casual visit. Even Realm King had proactively asked him to go to the abyssal spacetime, indicating that there was something there that could enhance his abilities. Currently, Frelace also summoned him for this reason. "I know a bit about it. If you ask who in the entire middle-tier spacetime knows the most about the abyss, it must be the Abyssal Lord." Immortal Lord Zhuyang, being a peak existence of the 8th Tribulation Realm, was very respectful towards Jian Wushuang. They had felt the intensity of the battle in the Niantian Secret Realm earlier. Moreover, Barut had already fallen, which was likely closely related to the person in front of them. How could he dare to be careless? Jian Wushuang had long heard of the Abyssal Lord and wasted no words. The other party's presence was in the abyssal spacetime. Buzz! He tore through spacetime with one hand, extending his arm into the crack. After searching for a moment, he pulled out the Abyssal Lord, the foremost expert of the middle-level spacetime, with one hand. This scene left Immortal Lord Zhuyang and Fuego breathless. Both of them were 8th Tribulation Realm experts, with Immortal Lord Zhuyang even being a universe master at the peak of the 8th Tribulation Realm. Yet neither was a match for the Abyssal Lord. However, in Jian Wushuang's hand, the Abyssal Lord was like a baby, easily captured. One should know that the Abyssal Lord's divine power exceeded 15 million. For Jian Wushuang to capture him effortlessly, he must have at least 20 million in divine power and an overwhelming advantage in Cultivation Realm. But Jian Wushuang was only in the 7th Tribulation Realm. Frelace, however, was not surprised at all. When Jian Wushuang was a Tao Lord, he was already that strong. Now that he had reached the Universe Master of the 7th Tribulation, Frelace believed he could surpass the 8th Tribulation, even the 9th Tribulation. In reality, only Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing knew it wasn't that exaggerated. It was mainly due to the divine domain. Using the divine domain against ordinary practitioners was the most effective. Throughout the northern spacetime, except for the 3 eternal beings, Jian Wushuang could freely use the divine domain. Of course, this excluded Mieshang. As for the eternal beings, it was because they had reached the 9th Tribulation. If he used the divine domain, the 3 eternal beings could unleash divine power exceeding 30 million. If there was another one to add, it would be Hu Qing. Hu Qing's future self could barely reach 30 million in divine power. Jian Wushuang himself, due to the refining of his divine power, could break through 10,000, achieving such an increase. Now, using the divine domain, he could elevate his divine power to 25 million. Without using the divine domain, he could reach over 15 million. Overall, in the entire northern spacetime, there were no more opponents. The few strong men of the giant god clan, while shocked, turned to look at the Abyssal Lord. At this moment, the Abyssal Lord was the most speechless. He didn't know what had happened. Just a moment ago, he was celebrating the passing of a tribulation with friends and family, and now he was captured. Instantly, he understood who this unfamiliar young man before him was. "Are you a senior from the upper-level spacetime?" Jian Wushuang saw that the other party was still somewhat sensible and casually tossed him aside, his voice cold. "You don't need to be afraid. I just want to explore the abyssal spacetime, along with these friends of mine." He gestured towards the members of the giant god clan. This could also be considered a repayment. Previously, he had informed them about Barut's situation. Now, this was to repay the favor, settling the debt. "No problem," the Abyssal Lord agreed immediately. No matter what, the abyss was his territory. Even if Jian Wushuang was extremely powerful, he still needed to be greeted. The Abyssal Lord, who had fought Immortal Lord Zhuyang for several eras, never expected this to be the outcome. The abyss had devoured countless treasures and secret realms, simultaneously providing feedback to the entire spacetime. As a member of the giant god clan, Immortal Lord Zhuyang was aware of the abyss's special nature. Entering the abyss was also for cultivation. Treasures were secondary. The abyss had both devouring and feedback capabilities. Injecting one's power into the abyss would result in greater power being fed back into the divine body and origin source. Simply put, it was an ultimate treasure trove that could significantly enhance a practitioner in a short time. The Abyssal Lord, who had been guarding the abyss, became the first expert of the middle-level spacetime for this reason. Realm King letting Jian Wushuang enter the abyss was actually to allow him to comprehend the law rules within it. However, he had his own plans, intending to search for the treasures left behind by Moro spacetime. Beast God Weapon. As for enhancing his origin source, he absorbed the power left by Barut, which had not yet been exhausted. With the help of abyssal spacetime, he could completely absorb this power and significantly enhance his Starry Sky origin source. Abyssal Lord, I hope you don't mind me saying something. At this moment, Hu Qing interjected, causing the Abyssal Lord to look over. Hu Qing's expression was calm, but the aura around him was extraordinary. The Abyssal Lord could sense the gap between them and spoke very politely. This senior, please feel free to speak. Abyssal spacetime does not belong to anyone. You know its function. Why monopolize it? Hu Qing's words sounded ridiculous. Such a heaven-defying treasure should be enjoyed exclusively, right? Contributing it would be laughable. This was just the surface view. In fact, the Abyssal Lord had initially thought about this. Hearing Hu Qing's words now, he fell into deep thought and then explained, Senior may not know that there is a barrier between the mid-level spacetime and the upper-level spacetime. This barrier also blocks the opportunities for ordinary cultivators. Without this barrier, the mid-level spacetime would also face pressure from the upper-level spacetime. Perhaps then, I would open up abyssal spacetime. Simply put, currently, abyssal spacetime had no pressure. Hu Qing smiled after hearing this. You were right. If there were external pressure, the mid-level spacetime with abyssal spacetime would likely not be inferior to the upper-level spacetime. TSK, TSK. Jian Wushuang clicked his tongue and turned to the Abyssal Lord, saying, This time, I give you a chance. I will make an oath with you. 10 eras from now, I will lead the lower level to attack the mid-level. I give you 10 eras. If you can stop us, I will join your abyssal spacetime and break the barrier of the upper-level spacetime. The Abyssal Lord's face froze in surprise. You seniors think too highly of the mid-level spacetime. Even with the super treasure of abyssal spacetime, it would be difficult to cultivate superpowerful beings in 10 eras. At most, it can only elevate the overall strength by 1 level. Haha, since you lack confidence, I will let you control abyssal spacetime for another 10 eras. After this time, I will lead the cultivator army from the lower level to attack the mid-level. Jian Wushuang originally intended to compete fairly with the other party and forcibly take over abyssal spacetime. But he did not have the time now, so he set it for 10 eras later. After dealing with Mieshang, he would break the barrier between the lower and mid-levels, lead the cultivators from the lower level to attack the mid-level, take over abyssal spacetime, cultivate a large number of powerful beings, and then break the barrier of the upper level, entering the upper level, until he unified the entire northern spacetime. The appearance of Barut and Zamasu made him understand the vast gap between the northern spacetime and the Realm God continent, and even the other spacetimes. The Realm King who ruled the northern spacetime had lost his true self. Protecting the northern spacetime depended on the strength of the cultivators themselves. The current northern spacetime had barriers between the upper, middle, and lower levels, and the gaps were too large. To break this gap and improve overall strength. By then, Danbao would have almost created the resurrection secret method, greatly enhancing the overall strength of the northern spacetime. This was exactly what he wanted to see, and it also helped Zhenling fulfill the promise of making Qishan Temple great again. With his strength, he could achieve this. Among those present, only Hu Qing and Frelesa knew his intentions. The Abyssal Lord stood frozen in place, not daring to speak. If Jian Wushuang really wanted to do this, the Abyssal Lord could only retreat and give way. All right, let's go take a look inside the abyss first. Seeing Abyssal Lord's frightened expression, he said no more and led the group towards the core of the abyss. Abyssal spacetime, truly the largest spacetime in the mid-level, comparable to ancient moon spacetime. However, this distance was just a step away for him. When Immortal Lord Zhuyang saw the dark spacetime, his face was excited. He had waited countless years for this moment, and this time he had to thank Frelesa, or else he would have already reached the starry sky. Returning to the starry sky could still bring improvement, but he wanted to test his limits. When he returned to the starry sky later, he could perform better and obtain more resources. The abyss here is indeed different from the one in the divine domain. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered when he saw the true abyss. It seems that Zamasu is far inferior to the realm king god, Hu Qing remarked calmly after seeing it. The divine domain was far away, and just absorbing a mid-level spacetime had caused a burden. However, this abyss could sustain the entire northern spacetime with plenty to spare. Everyone standing above the abyss could feel their power draining and then being replenished. This feeling was too marvelous. If Jian Wushuang hadn't entered yet, Immortal Lord Zhuyang couldn't have resisted rushing in first. Let's go! Jian Wushuang didn't stay any longer and led the way in. The others followed him inside. Within the abyss, it was dark and incredibly silent. There was no danger at all. According to the Abyssal Lord's explanation, the abyss had no dangers but possessed an immensely strong gravitational pull. Below the tribulation level, one could only practice in the air above the abyss. Upon entering, Jian Wushuang saw that the surroundings of the abyss were filled with great halls, likely belonging to the strong ones of abyssal spacetime. As for the depths of the abyss, few ventured there without the Abyssal Lord's orders. Through countless eras, only the descendants of the Abyssal Lord had the privilege to go deep. After delving 10,000 miles, the gravitational force was strong enough to forcibly pull in universe masters of the fifth tribulation. Here, there were no more training halls or caves, and every 10,000 miles there was a flag. It indicated the required realm and divine power needed to continue descending. Since the era when the Abyssal Lord took control, the deepest record for descending into the abyss was set by the Abyssal Lord himself, reaching a depth of 190,000 miles. That was his limit. Any further and his divine body would be crushed. Actually, the abyss didn't necessarily become more effective the deeper it went. The required depth varied with strength. For those at the tribulation level, 50,000 miles was roughly the limit. That was just right for pressure-free training. Jian Wushuang, I won't accompany you further down. At the 5,000-mile mark, Frelesa and a few giants stayed behind. The others continued to descend. At 130,000 miles, Fuego also stayed behind. At this point, only 4 remained: Jian Wushuang, Hu Qing, the Abyssal Lord, and Immortal Lord Zhuyang. The Abyssal Lord's training spot was at 190,000 miles, about the same for Immortal Lord Zhuyang. Their strengths were almost on par, but the Abyssal Lord, with the help of the great formation surrounding the abyss and his own origin source Dao Arena, could easily block Immortal Lord Zhuyang. To seize this precious land from the Abyssal Lord, at least 18 million units of divine power were needed. Phew! 180,000 miles. Immortal Lord Zhuyang also stopped. He had reached his limit. Dao friend Wushuang, this is as far as I can go. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly and continued to descend with Hu Qing. Not long after, the Abyssal Lord also stopped. In the end, only Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing were left. Even with the blessing of the origin source Dao Arena, it's still quite strenuous. Jian Wushuang shook his head helplessly. The ring on his finger then burst out with a black mist ring. It enveloped him and Hu Qing. Without the suppression of the supreme law rules, their divine power exceeded 20 million as they rushed to the bottom of the abyss. Without anyone else, the two of them descended at the fastest speed. During the descent, Jian Wushuang sensed a familiar aura. The power there had already surpassed 18 million units of divine power. To enter this place, even a supreme treasure needed to be at the top level of the 8 tribulation. Beast God Weapon. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up when he saw a dark red mask floating in the abyss. Above it, the power of the beast god was still emanating. Tai Mian, the beast god of glutton. The beast god Tai Mian, also known as the Mask of Greed. It was one of the 9 great beast god weapons alongside Candle Dragon. He didn't expect it to be floating here. When entering the abyss, he had asked the Abyssal Lord if the treasures he had acquired from the abyss were still there, and the other had said they were, allowing him to choose freely when he left. Jian Wushuang had thought that the treasures left in the Moro spacetime had been taken by the Abyssal Lord. In fact, most of the treasures had been collected into the Qishan Temple before the destruction of Moro spacetime. Moreover, the treasures of Moro spacetime, those that surpassed the universe-tier artifacts, had been brought by Mieshang and were still in his possession. How many could have truly fallen into the abyss? Finding this mask of greed here made him very happy. After a slight observation with his mind, he found that the origin source of the mask had reached the perfection of the 8th tribulation realm. It was treasure of the perfect 8th tribulation realm. No wonder it appeared here. After countless years of tempering in the abyss, the mask had reached the limit that the northern spacetime could bear. Though not a divine artifact, it had reached the level of a subdivine artifact. Now you have a master. With a thought, he forcibly established ownership. The mask emitted a low hum of resistance but ultimately couldn't withstand Jian Wushuang's control. Finally, it quieted down in his hand. Congratulations, Brother Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was also very happy, smiling faintly. I finally got my second beast god weapon. Still quite a few to go to complete the collection. It will happen. Hu Qing nodded solemnly. He could foresee that Jian Wushuang would complete the collection of beast god weapons, though the journey would be fraught with difficulties. He didn't mention this. Let's go. Keep descending. He couldn't wait to explore the bottom. It was said the abyss was 1,000,000 miles deep. They were still far from reaching their limit. Only at 1,000,000 miles would they reach the bottom. Without demigod power, it was impossible to reach the bottom. However, with their divine power, reaching halfway posed no problem. They continued to descend for another hour, and they gathered quite a few treasures. All of them were treasures of the complete 8th tribulation realm, but compared to the beast god weapons, these treasures were quite ordinary. Neither of them took a fancy to the treasures, so they didn't bother collecting any. They decided to leave them for those destined to find them in the future. 350,000 miles. 400,000 miles. 500,000 miles. Phew! Hu Qing took a deep breath. I've reached my limit. Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow, a bit surprised. He hadn't felt any discomfort yet. How could Hu Qing have reached his limit already? Their strengths were actually quite close. If one were to argue who was stronger, it would undoubtedly be Hu Qing's future self. Hu Qing's true self had stopped at 300,000 miles. His future self, however, had reached 570,000 miles. His divine power exceeded 25 million. Hu Qing, your future self's divine power surpasses 25 million. How could you be feeling pressure? Jian Wushuang asked, puzzled. Could it be that you've discovered something? Hu Qing shook his head, glanced at the abyss below, and said calmly, Wushuang, the abyss is just a place for me to cultivate. My true self had already achieved enough cultivation at 300,000 miles. I only followed this far out of curiosity. Indeed, if it was just for cultivation, there was no need to insist on reaching the bottom. It was merely curiosity. Curiosity about what treasures might be at the bottom. Jian Wushuang nodded and said, All right, you stay here and cultivate. I'll continue to descend. This time, the cultivation might not take too long. Wuxia and the others have already returned to the downstream spacetime. We can't waste too much time. If Mieshang. He was worried about the safety of Wuxia and the others. They still needed to return soon. Don't worry. Wuxia and the others won't be in danger. Hu Qing calculated slightly and gave the answer. But Jian Wushuang thought otherwise. Mieshang was not a constant. He was a variable and anything could happen. It was better to be cautious. They couldn't waste too much time here. I'll go down and test my limits. From the looks of it, I might be close to the bottom. I'll take a look and come back up. It won't take more than 100 years, and then we should leave. After parting with Hu Qing, he continued to descend. His divine power kept increasing. He soon broke through 600,000 miles. Still feeling no significant pressure, he continued downward. Perhaps it was related to the abyss he controlled. The deeper he went, the easier it felt. In contrast, at depths of 300,000 to 400,000 miles, he felt great pressure. At that time, he had not yet used his divine domain. After using his divine domain, his speed increased continuously. Swish! Only 10,000 miles remained to the bottom. It seems I can really reach the bottom. His speed did not decrease and even accelerated. 10,000 miles were just a blink of an eye for him. Although this place was an abyss, it posed no pressure on him. Bang! With a momentum, his figure instantly touched the ground. I've reached the bottom. Jian Wushuang looked around. The bottom of the abyss was different from what he had imagined. The bottom of the abyss refined by Zamasu's divine domain was a devouring origin source. The bottom of the abyss refined by Realm King was flat and empty. After slightly adjusting his breathing, his mind power began to spread, gradually covering the entire bottom of the abyss. Jian Wushuang's eyes moved. His thought power observed a ruined Dao arena. His thought power covered the entire bottom of the abyss. There was only this one dilapidated Dao arena. No living creatures. There was no sign of any aura. He relaxed his vigilance and walked forward slowly. After passing 2 huge pillars, he entered the ruined Dao arena. Contrary to his expectations, there were no treasures here. If there were any treasures swallowed here, they would probably only be divine artifacts. He had some fantasies, but they were dashed. Now he could only see if there was anything in this Dao arena that could help him. The dilapidated Dao arena was quite shabby, with only a damaged statue whose face could not be seen clearly. Judging by the clothing, it should have been a human. It was not a god, but a cultivator. At the very least, it was a demigod or a super-strong universe god. Looking at it from below, this dojo did not seem to have been swallowed into this place. It looked more like it originally existed here. Unfortunately, there's no face, so I don't know what it looks like. He looked up at the sculpture, feeling a sense of familiarity, but couldn't pinpoint where he knew it from. The head of the statue was incomplete, making it impossible to see the facial features, and thus it was naturally impossible to know who it was. After circling the statue once, he found nothing else around it. Feeling a bit disappointed, he prepared to turn and leave to find an open spot to recover the power of Barut that he had absorbed within himself. However, as he turned his head, a bright light reflected back at him, shining at a perfect angle into his eyes. The blinding light made it impossible for him to open his eyes. Shielding his eyes with his hand, he took a closer look and was startled. Ahead, it was the head of the statue. There were cracks on the neck that matched the break on the statue, indicating that it had fallen from there. The light that had been refracted came from the ear of the head. My thought power couldn't detect it? Jian Wushuang was a bit surprised. He had just scanned everything in the surrounding darkness but didn't find this head. He walked over slowly, with one hand already reaching for the hilt of his Xianxia sword behind him. However, when he approached the broken head, he discovered a weak barrier around it that could block thought power. Crash! With just a gentle touch, he shattered the barrier, releasing an ancient aura. This barrier seemed to be a self-protective one, not deliberately placed by someone, otherwise it wouldn't have been so weak. As for the ancient aura, it was probably due to being sealed for too long. Poof! A bright lamp appeared in Jian Wushuang's hand. Using its light, he saw the head clearly. Ugly. What appeared before his eyes was an extremely ugly face. The face was ferocious and colored. However, it was only half. Half of the face was green, and the other half was black. The mouth was grinning, and the eyes were wide open. Jian Wushuang found the sight quite horrifying. This? Why does it look so much like Zamasu? After observing the ugly face for a long time, He finally realized where the familiarity came from. He glanced back at the statue behind him. Thinking of Zamasu's appearance, he turned back to the head in horror. It looked alike. It looked exactly alike. If it weren't for the half-black face, he would have recognized it immediately. It was just that the carved appearance was too ferocious, making it hard to associate it with the calm-faced Zamasu. Zamasu! After confirming completely, he took a deep breath, feeling a turmoil in his heart. In the abyss built by the realm king god, there was a figure of Zamasu. Moreover, it seemed that the figure should be of two people just combined into one. How could such a figure appear here? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. Perhaps only the realm king god would know. After thinking it over without any clues, he decided not to dwell on it. He didn't have the time to research, so he wanted to take this Dao arena away. Although it had no value, he could ask the realm king about it in the future. Zamasu had caused no small amount of trouble in the northern spacetime. Perhaps from this sculpture, he could find some clues to avoid being persecuted by Zamasu again. He had worried greatly for the northern spacetime. In the future, he would need to have the Realm King compensate him. Swish! He raised his hand and directly put the entire broken Dao arena into his space ring, finally nodding in satisfaction, ready to start digesting the power he had devoured. But just as the Dao arena entered the mustard seed, it instantly turned to dust. He was startled and tried to retrieve it, but it was too late. He directly crushed the mustard seed, and the shattered ring in his hand revealed the destroyed space within. This kind of space ring he could create with a wave of his hand. As long as he mastered space, even an emperor could create it. But after becoming a universe master, he had an origin source in the starry sky and was too lazy to make these rings or mustard seeds. Most of the treasures were thrown into the origin source, where the space was far more stable than the mustard seed. Since the figure was related to Zamasu, he had put it in the ring for safety. He didn't expect the Dao arena to disappear after entering the mustard seed. After crushing the ring, a pair of earrings appeared in his hand. What is this? Jian Wushuang didn't expect the figure to yield a treasure. He held the earrings and scrutinized them closely, finding nothing special. But he remembered the origin of the earrings. They were worn on the sharp ears of that head. This meant the earrings belonged to Zamasu. His interest was piqued. He gently probed the earrings with his thought energy, but was slightly disappointed when no special power emerged, only a life force. This life force was very ordinary, something he had in abundance. To him, it was like trash no one would pick up from the street. After probing and finding nothing, he casually threw them into the origin source. Since they were related to Zamasu, he would ask Realm King about them later. Now he had to quickly digest the power he had absorbed. Whoosh! He exhaled a turbid breath. The power had already dissipated into the origin source. The dissipated power naturally entered the abyss. Buzz! After absorbing his power, the entire abyss trembled. Clearly, his power was immense within the northern spacetime. It was enough to rival a long river of spacetime. Within Jian Wushuang's own origin starry sky, it suddenly contracted, and 3 super-universes rotated around him in an unbreakable pattern. He sent out all the absorbed power, and even exhausted all his divine power. The next moment, a vast amount of power began to feed back. At the bottom of the abyss, he could absorb the purest power. The feedback power was uniform, not like the mixed power actively devoured. This was the benefit of the abyss. Could quickly enhance strength. Origin source. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists. At this moment, he did not use any secret methods, merely using the 3 universes to enhance his origin source. Flashes of light also glittered in the starry sky. Those were stars with black holes in their centers. Then came the secret realms. In just an instant, the framework of a universe was formed. The 4th universe. Jian Wushuang pointed with a finger, and the 4th bright light in the starry sky lit up. The universe was formed. Then came the 5th universe. The continuous feedback of power made his origin soar. The 1st universe had taken him a lifetime. The 2nd universe only a few eons. The 3rd universe only a few years. The fourth universe took just an instant. The fifth universe slowed down. Because the feedback power was also weakening. Couldn't be as strong as before. However, the speed was still not slow. Earlier, based on his estimation, using the absorption of Barut's power, he could condense 3 origin source universes. Now, in the Abyss, he could condense even more. These powers originally came from the northern spacetime, absorbed by Barut through the divine domain. After Barut's fall, because these powers had entered Barut's divine body, they couldn't return to the middle-level spacetimes. Keeping them would be a waste, so Jian Wushuang took advantage of it. Now, in the Abyss, he was able to fully utilize these powers. The fifth universe was also slowly forming. The power weakened once again. The remaining power could still condense at least 2 universes. That would complete the 7th universe. However, he still couldn't sense the heavenly tribulation from the supreme law rules. It seemed that even 7 universes were not enough. If he could sense the tribulation, he would have wanted to undergo it immediately. Now the power in the origin source was very abundant, and he didn't need origin stones to succeed. Unfortunately, his current realm was still insufficient. He could only put it off for later. Fortunately, the bottle of blood-colored power was with him, allowing him to further enhance his basic divine power here. After overcoming the 7th tribulation, he had yet to increase his divine power. His divine body had reached its peak, capable of bearing stronger divine power. 3 million divine power to him was like a feather, without weight. Phew! Illuminating the universe and absorbing the feedback power, the further it went, the weaker the power became. The universe's formation also slowed down, but this was slow only compared to the speed of forming the 4th and 5th universes. Actually, it was still very fast, taking just a few years to complete. Now, in his origin source starry sky, 7 universes were shining brightly. They connected into a single line. There was a timeline between each universe. River of time and space? Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed as he stared at his origin source universe. The connected universes indeed had the shadow of the river of time and space. As he thought before, above the universe master was the master of time and space, which made some sense, but no one called it that. Universe master, universe god? He always felt there was no difference between the two. It seemed someone deliberately didn't let them continue to enhance their origin source. When they were weak, they thought the origin source was the most important. Following the divine power route seemed counterproductive, like practicing qi versus refining the body. Refining the body to the point of survival was enough, or buying a piece of extremely strong defensive armor was sufficient, just like improving one's realm through practicing qi. However, after becoming universe masters, they found everyone focused on divine power and the divine body, losing interest in the origin source. In discussions, almost everyone said cultivating the origin source was a waste of time. It was better to directly enhance divine power for more noticeable effects. As a result, he started to doubt himself. Fortunately, he didn't give up. His origin source had always been stronger than his divine power. Even creating the super-eternal ancient transformation secret technique was based mainly on the origin source, with divine power as a supplement. The Starry Sky Chronicles focused on the origin source of Sword Dao as the core, serving as his strongest trump card. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't want to regret it later. Jian Wushuang shook his head, solidifying his Dao heart. A goal must be unwavering or it wouldn't be a goal. He wanted to break through the 9 tribulations and become a true god of spacetime, not some universe god with no limits. Why call it universe god if it had no limits? It was still due to the origin source being too weak. If one created a long river of spacetime, could it be considered that they were realm king? They would directly surpass the universe master. Wouldn't that be delightful? Buzz. Divine power? He waved his hand, and a powerful force entered his body. The blood-red color spread to the entire bottom of the abyss. Crack! A burst of explosive sound echoed, and the blood mist shattered into particles. Jian Wushuang's expression froze in surprise, and he exclaimed, "Disintegration!" That blood-red power actually disintegrated his divine power. The seemingly intangible blood-red color seemed to be engaging in some kind of power struggle. He had never encountered such a situation before. Originally, he thought he would enhance his basic divine power while at the bottom of the abyss, but unexpectedly, he encountered this situation. It startled him. When absorbing the blood-red power, he became extremely cautious. Absorbing just a trace almost caused his eyes to burst. That kind of power, as if a primordial murderer appeared within his body, trying to break free from his restraint. For a moment, he almost lost consciousness. Frightened, he quickly expelled the blood-red power again. He dared not easily absorb it again. Gazing at the pervasive blood mist, he waited for the blood-red power and the invisible power to distinguish the winner before trying again. The blood mist surged. Thunder rumbled around him. As a result, the blood mist he saw was like the thunder mist on a rainy day, with flashes of light inside, shaking his heart. This situation persisted for several hours before it stopped. Could it be that the abyss is incompatible with the blood-red power? He muttered to himself. The abyss was refined by the Realm King, and the blood-red power came from Shilu, which was created by Zamasu. So, the power in the abyss was incompatible with Zamasu? It didn't seem possible. The divine domain refined by Zamasu was in his hand, and he used it in the abyss without any side effects. Why was the abyss only incompatible with this blood-red power? This question perhaps only the Realm King God could answer, and even the Realm King might not know. To verify it, he might have to wait for a long time, at least until he reached the Realm God continent. Forget it. I'll just absorb some and try. Looking at the calm blood-red power in front of him, he absorbed a trace, and this time there was no reaction as severe as before, and he could already control it. After several trials, he began to boldly devour it. After absorbing, he released more blood-red power, waiting for several hours of struggle before absorbing again. Repeatedly, absorbing the blood-red power in the abyss to enhance his divine power. The speed was indeed fast. Unconsciously, his divine power had reached 5 million. But it still hadn't reached the limit. He continued to enhance it. Time passed quickly. 30 years later, Jian Wushuang's cloths were mostly tattered because even his clothes were shattered by the absorption of divine power. Now, his divine power had reached 8 million. It had also reached the limit of his divine body. Clenching his fists, he suddenly exploded, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Tribulation armor! He shouted angrily, and dark red battle armor appeared on his body. At this moment, his basic divine power was 10 million. Ah! He clenched his fists and widened his eyes in anger. Super Eternal Ancient Transformation. Boom! The immense aura caused the entire abyss to tremble. Now his divine power was 20 million. Even without using the Origin Source Tao Arena, his divine power had reached 20 million. The Super Eternal Ancient Transformation's amplified divine power began to decrease at this moment. But with the growth of double the power, he was still very satisfied. The Super Eternal Ancient Transformation, with its amplified divine power, was based on the Origin Source. The divine power of 20 million corresponded exactly to the limit of the northern spacetime. If he used the Origin Source Tao Arena again, in the divine domain, his divine power would soar. Now, with the Origin Source Tao Arena of 7 universes, it could already amplify by 70%. 3 universes increased by 60%, 7 universes by 70%. It seemed unreasonable, but it was actually very reasonable. Because the Origin Source was like this. This was also why so many people switched to the divine power route. There was no choice. The effects were too slow. The reason he was so determined to follow the Origin Source route was actually influenced by the Qixin Temple. The shock brought by the Origin Source of all things was too great at that time. So much so that it made him firmly believe that the Origin Source was the strongest. Up to now, he had no regrets. Whoosh! With one hand clenched into a fist, the power of the Origin Source gathered in his palm. Buzz! An invincible force erupted from his body. That powerful force surprised even Jian Wushuang. Such strength was never imagined. Or rather, he had not thought he would be this strong in the northern spacetime. The Origin Source had no restrictions. even outside the divine domain, easily surpassing divine power. Even without using the Starry Sky Chronicles, his origin source power could easily surpass his own divine power. It meant that his current origin source could exert power exceeding 20 million divine power. This was without using the divine domain. Once using the divine domain without restrictions, divine power would also soar. The origin source Tao arena descended, amplifying divine power by 70%. 20 million divine power, amplified by 70%, was 34 million. Much stronger than Hu Qing's future self. 30 million divine power was already the combat power of the Ninth Tribulation. 34 million divine power was definitely a strong figure in the Ninth Tribulation. Not the pinnacle, but definitely not ordinary. The threshold for the Ninth Tribulation was 20 million divine power. 30 million was the normal standard, 34 million was already a strong figure among them. Plus his origin source power. 7 universes, containing the power of 700,000 black holes. Probably the universe of a universe master was comparable to the power of his 7 universes. After all, most universe masters still followed the divine power route, and almost none followed the origin source route. Because it was too difficult, in the same realm it was simply incomparable to divine power. Jian Wushuang had the extreme Tao Starry Sky, so the origin source was very strong. Without the extreme Tao, even if he mastered the ultimate Tao, he would not have such a strong origin source universe in the universe master realm. At that time, he might also choose the divine power route. Some paths were not voluntary, but forced. The origin source Tao arena disappeared. His aura retreated, maintaining only the super-eternal ancient transformation. It was time to leave. Unconsciously, he had already spent several decades at the bottom of the abyss. It was time to go. Swoosh. Coming in had been somewhat troublesome, but getting out was relatively easy. He could swiftly leave the abyss without even using his divine power. Soon he saw Hu Qing. After gesturing for Hu Qing to follow, they continued upward. He didn't tell Hu Qing about what had happened at the bottom of the abyss because he hadn't figured it out himself, so there was no point in explaining. Brother Wushuang, your origin source and divine power have both changed. It seems you've gained a lot this time. Hu Qing couldn't help but exclaim upon seeing his divine power. 20 million divine power. Hu Qing, without using his future body, was also roughly at this level. He had also improved considerably in the abyss, but it was still much less compared to Jian Wushuang. If Jian Wushuang used his origin source Tao arena, he could unleash a maximum divine power of 34 million in the divine domain. Hu Qing's future self was no more than 30 million. He had surpassed Hu Qing. Just a slight breakthrough. Jian Wushuang responded with a faint smile. Their speed increased, and soon they saw the Abyssal Lord. After casually pulling him up, they bid farewell to Fuluosa and others, leaving the abyss. The people of the giant god clan rarely entered the abyss. They wouldn't come out unless they had reached their limits. However, the Abyssal Lord had been cultivating here for many years. It was no longer much help to him unless he reached the Ninth Tribulation realm. But in the current northern spacetime, it was still a long way from the Ninth Tribulation realm. They had to wait for Danbao to create the resurrection secret method. Once the scattered cultivators could rekindle their path of cultivation, the next step would be to elevate the overall level of life. Step by step, they would perfect the life system of the northern spacetime. Although this had little to do with Jian Wushuang, he was not a scattered tribulation, and the Ninth Tribulation realm was far off for him. However, after experiencing the incident with Barut, he felt that to protect the northern spacetime, he first needed to make the northern spacetime stronger. Of course, he also needed to become stronger. The super-eternal ancient transformation was currently his fastest method to increase divine power, and it needed further innovation. But this time, he needed a beast god weapon. The beast god weapon would merge with the super-eternal ancient transformation. Abyssal Lord, have you ever found such a treasure in the abyss? Jian Wushuang took out the mask of greed, or the greedy wolf mask, he had obtained in the abyss. The dark red divine power of the beast on it was particularly eye-catching. The Abyssal Lord glanced at it and nodded, saying, "Yes, I once found such an item in the abyss. However, the aura of that treasure was much weaker than this mask. The one I found was only at the 7th tribulation level, and its origin source was already damaged, so it was useless to me. I threw it into the treasury. Lead the way. Jian Wushuang did not ask more, but a gleam of joy flashed in his eyes. He didn't expect to find such an item from the Abyssal Lord. When he obtained the greedy wolf mask, he thought those beast god weapons would be at least below 20,000 miles, but he didn't expect to find weaker ones. It seemed that without the origin source, they floated on the surface of the abyss. Just as he finished gathering the greedy wolf mask, he sensed a similar aura and stopped in midair. The Abyssal Lord was somewhat surprised. However, he didn't dare say much and stood silently aside, waiting. Jian Wushuang used his mind to quickly search for the similar aura he had just detected. Found it! He casually tore open the space, and just like when he grabbed the Abyssal Lord, the rummaged through the rift. Soon, he brought a cultivator before him. Seeing this person, the Abyssal Lord exclaimed in surprise, "It's you!" Jian Wushuang glanced at the Abyssal Lord and noticed he recognized the person. He asked, "You know him?" "Yes, this kid once sneaked into the abyss, and I happened to catch him. But seeing his potential, I didn't make things difficult for him." The Abyssal Lord laughed awkwardly. The person's strength was indeed impressive. A universe master at the 6th tribulation level with a divine power of 1.2 million was already considered a peak expert among the 6th tribulation. Seeing that the person was no longer struggling, Jian Wushuang threw him aside. The captured universe master at the 6th tribulation level was bewildered. Seeing the Abyssal Lord, he revealed an angry expression and said coldly, "Abyssal Lord, you imprisoned me for tens of thousands of epochs, and now you've brought me here again. What do you want?" Abyssal Lord was somewhat embarrassed. After glancing at Jian Wushuang, he finally said, "Yi Tian, it is this senior who is looking for you. Not me." Yi Tian turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang, feeling a bit surprised. Such a young man, whose presence he couldn't even sense, and even Abyssal Lord called him senior. He suddenly realized and exclaimed, "Could it be that senior is at the 9th tribulation realm?" The uninformed Yi Tian did not know that Jian Wushuang was still a universe master at the 7th tribulation. Jian Wushuang shook his head with a bitter smile and personally explained, "Young friend Yi, I am not at the 9th tribulation. We in the northern spacetime do not have a universe master at the 9th tribulation. If one day you are about to cross the 9th tribulation, you must go to the upper-level spacetimes to visit a being called Tiansong. He will tell you everything." No 9th tribulation realm? Yi Tian was still pondering the first sentence, then thought of Jian Wushuang's advice and quickly thanked him. "Thank you, senior, for your guidance." At this moment, he remembered that it was Jian Wushuang who wanted to see him, so he asked, "I don't know what business senior has with this junior. I am willing to be of service. There is something I need your help with. I wonder if you can part with it?" Jian Wushuang said very politely. He did not intend to seize it by force, as there were so many people watching. He couldn't afford to lose face. A little guy at the 6th tribulation realm had obtained the beast god weapon which he could easily buy. Casually tossing out a treasure could make even an 8th tribulation realm envious. To buy a treasure from a little guy at the 6th tribulation realm was very simple. Yi Tian, however, felt a tremor in his heart. He suddenly understood that this was a forced buy. The key was that he really had an irreplaceable treasure on him. It was his life-bound treasure, indispensable on his path of cultivation. If he lost it, his cultivation journey would almost come to an end. No matter how strong Jian Wushuang was, no matter how many treasures he offered, he was unwilling to sell it. But facing a strong man, what could he do? Jian Wushuang was not a fool. He clearly saw the other's hesitation and remained silent, waiting for a response. This treasure had to be taken away today no matter what. Seeing the other hesitate, Hu Qing quietly transmitted a message. "Young friend, there is no need to hesitate. The treasure we want is not your innate treasure, but the one you obtained from the abyss." "A treasure from the abyss?" Yi Tian was stunned for a moment. then remembered the strange item he had obtained in the abyss. A blood-red cloak, moving without wind, majestic. The Qilin armor. When he first obtained it, he was still an ordinary universe master. His origin source was strong enough to activate the treasure, but later he could no longer use it. Out of curiosity about the origin source within the treasure, he dismantled the Qilin armor, kept the origin source, but the Qilin armor was taken away during a battle. Upon hearing this result, Jian Wushuang frowned. He silently cursed the other as a wastrel. If the origin source was insufficient, why not cultivate it? Dismantled? Taken away during a battle? With the origin source stripped away, the Qilin armor probably no longer had the aura of the beast god. Where could he find it now? If Senior is interested in that treasure, this Junior is willing to give you the origin source. As for the Qilin armor, it was taken by a 7th Tribulation Realm expert from Giant Peak Spacetime. I have no way to get it back. Yi Tian carefully took out the beast god origin source and handed it to Jian Wushuang. After handing it over, he stepped back again. Holding the blood-red origin source, Jian Wushuang remembered an introduction by the old ram-headed man about a super treasure. One of the 9 beast god weapons. Qilin, it was a cloak. Now only the origin source remained, and the Qilin armor was lost. How could I covet the belongings of a junior like you? I think this treasure is enough to buy this beast god origin source. Jian Wushuang casually pulled out a wooden box, and before handing it over, he opened it and introduced. This contains a heavenly eye spring pearl, which will help you in crossing the 7th tribulation. I see that your divine power has reached perfection. With this pearl, you have a 90% chance of success in the tribulation. Yi Tian, who initially wanted to refuse, widened his eyes when he heard that the success rate of passing the 7th tribulation was 90%. He hurriedly stepped forward to receive it, so shocked that he forgot to thank Jian Wushuang. It was Abyssal Lord who reminded him, Yi Tian, quickly thank the senior for his gracious gift. Thank you, senior. Yi Tian's expression changed, and he immediately adopted a respectful and admiring demeanor, bowing deeply. Jian Wushuang, however, waved his hand, showing little interest in such formalities. It was merely a fair trade, and there was no need for an exaggerated display of gratitude. Though the world was inherently unfair, the fairest principle was that the strong were revered. But sometimes, at a certain level, things would change. For example, Hu Qing would show compassion for the weak. Tong Tian Buddha had even fallen into the demonic path to break through his power limits. As for himself, Jian Wushuang had no particular thoughts. It was just an ordinary transaction. Though he could bully others with his power, there was no need to. If he engaged in wanton slaughter, it would provoke countless powerful adversaries, and it was time to curb his bloodthirsty impulses. By the way, you still need to stay by my side for a while. I need you to help me find the strong 7th tribulation being and retrieve the Qilin armor. Jian Wushuang continued, but you won't be at a disadvantage. During this time, I can give you some guidance in your cultivation. Upon hearing that he only needed to lead the way and would receive guidance from someone whom even Abyssal Lord respected so much, Yi Tian immediately agreed, realizing this was the greatest opportunity he had encountered in recent years. Jian Wushuang was not surprised by this reaction. He turned to Abyssal Lord and said, Let's go. It's time to bother you for a bit. Not at all. It's an honor to have you at my humble abode. Abyssal Lord was very humble, taking the initiative to lead Jian Wushuang and his group to another core of the abyssal spacetime. This was also the stronghold of Abyssal Lord. However, Jian Wushuang didn't stay long. After obtaining the treasure, he left in a hurry. The advance of Wuxia and his group made him uneasy. Revealing his strength likely caused Miashang to make full preparations. Therefore, he had to act quickly. Flowing Cloud Boots, a pair of ancient green battle boots, containing a dragon's roar, one of the 9 beast god weapons, representing the Azure Dragon. With this beast god weapon, he now had 3.5. The Qilin cloak was still incomplete, but it was close. If he personally pursued it, he would definitely retrieve it. His opponent was a 7th Tribulation Universe Master, and there was no escaping from him. If it were an emperor, it might have been troublesome, requiring Hu Qing's deduction. But a seventh tribulation universe master couldn't hide. Tearing through space, they arrived at giant peak spacetime almost instantly. This place was the territory of Immortal Lord Zhuyang. Before entering, he informed him, as they were acquaintances after all. When stepping into someone else's territory, it's always polite, especially when it involves seizing a treasure. Of course, it couldn't be called seizing. It was more like returnee owner. The other party had taken advantage of their powerful strength. Yi Tian's elder. It was reasonable for him to use his strength to Lord Jada. What a strange name. I found him. His thought power covered the entire giant peak spacetime, almost instantly locking onto the opponent's position. On a secluded star. It was on the edge of giant peak spacetime, and a universe master of the seventh tribulation was cultivating on such a desolate planet, which surprised Jian Wushuang. When he arrived, there was a group of alien powerhouses living on this planet. Senior, this Lord Jada is originally an alien. If it weren't for the protection of Immortal Lord Zhuyang, he would have been killed by our human powerhouses long ago. Yi Tian narrated the story of Lord Jada beside him. Jian Wushuang was somewhat moved. What he saw in Lord Jada was a kindly old man, carefully teaching those alien powerhouses how to cultivate and how to survive, especially how to survive among human powerhouses. This group of aliens living among human powerhouses was far less prosperous than those in the upper spacetime, because in the upper spacetime, individual strength was valued regardless of race. As long as one was a super powerhouse, they would be respected regardless of their origin. But it was different in the middle spacetime, where it was difficult for alien powerhouses to survive. Only a giant god race like Immortal Lord Zhuyang could dominate one side. Any other race would have been besieged long ago, because the giant god clan came from the starry sky. They were the number one race. That was why they were respected. This was also why Lord Jada sought refuge under Immortal Lord Zhuyang. Yi Tian, call him over. Jian Wushuang's tone was calm. He had initially planned to take it directly, but seeing the other party's difficult situation, he reconsidered. A bitter fate, just like his own. No one pitied him, but he could pity others. Upon hearing this, Yi Tian's face lit up with joy. He immediately obeyed and rushed down. Jada! 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 Yi Tian's voice echoed across the entire planet. Lord Jada, who had been lecturing to the many aliens, frowned and looked up at Yi Tian. At the same time, he noticed Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, two powerful beings without any aura, hidden in the void. Of course, it was only a simple concealment. If it were a deeper concealment, Lord Jada would not have been able to detect it. But even so, if he hadn't captured them with his naked eyes, he wouldn't have noticed them. Lord Jada immediately stood up and flashed to Yi Tian's side. After glancing at Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, he respectfully said, "You must be Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. The Immortal Lord has already informed me that you would come." Oh! Jian Wushuang was a bit surprised. He had only told Immortal Lord Zhuyang that he would go to giant peak spacetime to look for a treasure, but he hadn't mentioned who would come. Could this have been predicted? Was it a reminder from the Abyssal Lord? It shouldn't be the Abyssal Lord, as the two were not on good terms. Predicting it was even less likely, as Immortal Lord Zhuyang was not Hu Qing. While he hesitated, a familiar aura appeared on the body of Lord Jada. Buzz! The twilight aura hovered in the heavens and the earth. Xuanwu shield, shield void. Lord Jada respectfully held it in his hands and said, "Junior has learned that Senior is searching for the same treasure and is willing to offer the shield void." Jian Wushuang's expression was serious when he saw this beast god weapon, but he said nothing and casually beckoned it over. As he caressed the Xuanwu, one of the 9 beast god weapons, he finally understood. The primary function of this beast god weapon was to isolate everything. It could achieve an effect akin to absolute isolation from heaven and earth. No wonder he couldn't sense it. The key was that he hadn't expected the other party to possess this treasure. This was probably related to Immortal Lord Zhuyang. Frosa knew he had a beast god weapon, and this matter should have been mentioned to Immortal Lord Zhuyang, and possibly even brought up with Lord Jedi. So when he mentioned going to Giant Peak Spacetime, Immortal Lord Zhuyang informed Lord Jedi, who then proactively delivered the treasure back. For Jian Wushuang, this was akin to searching high and low for something only to find it effortlessly. Suddenly, he had another one. It was simply an unexpected gain. This is the Fire Cloud Cloak, Qilin. Lord Jedi took out the Fire Cloud Cloak that had been snatched from Yi Tian's hands and handed it to Jian Wushuang again. The origin source is in Yi Tian's hands, and Senior must have already obtained it. Jian Wushuang saw no need to hide the truth and nodded. You actually knew that the Qilin's origin source was with Yi Tian? I knew. I discovered it when I fought with Yi Tian back then. This time, it was Yi Tian's turn to be puzzled. Since you knew, why didn't you also take the origin source? I'm not a human race powerhouse. If I act too absolutely, it won't be good. Lord Jada shook his head helplessly. Yi Tian took a deep breath, never having imagined that a universe master of the seventh tribulation would be so cautious in dealing with a universe master of the sixth tribulation. In a world where the strong ruled, if they were all humans, even the Abyssal Lord's son would be robbed. But Lord Jada was humble to this extent. Jian Wushuang felt a pang of sympathy for the other party. He rummaged through his origin source and took out a mustard seed, saying, "Take this, consider the treasure bought by me. Although it might feel like a forced sale, this treasure is of great use to me, so take it as compensation." No, Immortal Lord Zhuyang has already promised. We can't take Senior's treasure anymore. Lord Jada hurriedly declined. In fact, this transaction was entirely voluntary on his part, because Immortal Lord Zhuyang promised him that in the future, all the aliens in Giant Peak Spacetime could be under his command, and 1/10 of the domain would be handed over to him. This was an opportunity for their alien race to rise. It was much more important to him than an 8 Tribulation Realm treasure. Jian Wushuang noticed the other party's hesitation and explained, "I am not a practitioner of the mid-level spacetime. You can keep these treasures. No one will trouble you." You? Lord Jada, after hearing this, turned to look at the little ones on the planet. His heart warmed. He did not refuse any longer, accepted the mustard seed, and bowed deeply to Jian Wushuang. With a lump in his throat, he had thousands of words but couldn't say anything, so he buried them deep in his heart. When he stood up again, Jian Wushuang and his companions had disappeared. Only he remained, standing in the void, feeling lost. With a thought, he looked at the treasure within the mustard seed. His expression changed drastically. After looking around, he joyfully flew back to the planet. Outside Giant Peak Spacetime. 2 Seniors. This is where we part ways. Jian Wushuang nodded and said, "What you lack is not time, remember that?" "Remember that." Yi Tian nodded excitedly. Jian Wushuang had kept his promise to give him guidance. It was time to part ways. Go now. Jian Wushuang opened a spacetime passage for the other party. Once you reach the upper spacetime, you can go to the Ancient Tomb Sect or Tiansong Palace. Just mention my name. The kindness of my elder. I will never forget. Yi Tian's eyes were filled with excitement as he took a deep look at Jian Wushuang before turning and entering the spacetime tunnel. This time he had obtained 2 beast god weapons, both bought from practitioners. Although it was essentially coercion, he had given the other party ample compensation. They shouldn't hold a grudge against him. At least that's what he believed. Originally, he planned to send away Lord Jada along with them. But when the other party mentioned the promise of Immortal Lord Zhuyang, he saw a glimmer of light in Lord Jada's eyes. That was attachment and also faith. Therefore, he didn't bring it up and just gave the other party enough treasures. Those treasures could help Lord Jada achieve his dreams. "Brother Wushuang, you've changed." Watching everything, Hu Qing smiled at him. Jian Wushuang replied with a smile. "Sometimes, when I think about it, it seems like we don't really have enemies. Perhaps we can all sit down and talk peacefully. Just like Yi Tian and Lord Jada, the beast god weapons might be crucial treasures for them. But they voluntarily handed them over to me. In truth, it was strength that took the lead. But to ensure they had no regrets, I gave them enough compensation. If I could dedicate my life to Mieshang, I'm afraid they would be deeply grateful too. Ha ha. The last sentence made Hu Qing laugh out loud. In fact, the reason for being so devoted to Yi Tian and Lord Jada was for another reason. One reason was Yi Tian. He was a wandering cultivator. To help him, it was necessary to provide a better environment. Back then, teacher Xianxia had also helped him in this way. As for Lord Jada, it was different. From him, he saw the shadow of Realm King. The two had no connection, but what they did was admirable. Realm King devoted himself to the northern spacetime. Even when facing a demigod like Barut, he appeared very humble. He dared not retort even when insulted and had to seek reinforcements. The final decisions were not in his hands, and the northern spacetime, although already very low-key, still had countless predators eyeing it. Lord Jada, for his kin, dealt with a universe master of the sixth tribulation very cautiously. Different identities, different statuses, yet they had similar experiences. That was why he wanted to help them, but he didn't say it out loud. By the way, I just sensed the aura of the pyramid. Brother Wuxia and the others should still be in the middle level or middle stream spacetimes. Hu Qing suddenly remembered the aura he had sensed earlier and quickly reminded, "If we head there now, we should be able to go back together." "All right." Immediately, Hu Qing led the way, and Jian Wushuang hurried at full speed towards the junction of the middle and lower reaches. The pyramid was there. However, its aura was already cut off from the middle spacetime. Jian Wushuang couldn't sense it. It was Hu Qing who deduced it. One had to admit that the path of Zen became more effective in the later stages. If they were treasure hunting together, they would have to treat Hu Qing like a god of wealth. He was practically a treasure god. Jian Wushuang turned to look at Hu Qing, thinking of Qishan Temple. He very much wanted Hu Qing to deduce the current state of Qishan Temple, but in the end, he did not ask. Such a simple matter, could Hu Qing have not thought of it? Either it was impossible to predict, because the presence of Mieshang caused the downstream spacetime to become chaotic and unpredictable, or he had foreseen something bad. One of these was bound to be true. He hoped it was the former. Mieshang came for him. He probably wouldn't destroy Qishan Temple. If Qishan Temple were destroyed, he wouldn't have to return. He would directly go to Realm God Continent and continue to hide. Leaving Qishan Temple was also to keep him there, to force him to fulfill his promise, to return to Qishan Temple. After acquiring the divine domain, he could surpass his limits at any time, and his speed naturally increased several times over. In just a few days, he reached the confluence of the middle and lower streams. From the middle stream to the lower stream was very simple for him. Go with the flow. Swim against the current. Strong beings from the middle stream rarely went to the lower stream. In the lower stream spacetime, there were more than 100 tributaries, but in these tributaries, there were not even a few universe masters. In the tributary where the primitive universe was located, there were no universe masters at all. Now, millions of epochs had passed. There should have been many universe masters born. When they left, Shang was already at the tribulation level. As long as he didn't fall, he should now be at least a 5th or 6th tribulation universe master. He acknowledged Shang's potential. Besides him and Hu Qing, Shang was definitely the most promising inheritor of Qishan Temple. At the very least, a 5th tribulation level, and if he was fast, he could reach 6th tribulation levels. If he had followed them to the upper stream spacetime, his achievements would not have been inferior to theirs. At the very least, he would have been a 7th tribulation level, possibly even an 8th tribulation level. Hu Qing became an 8th tribulation level because the Celestial Maiden scattered her origin source and gave it to Hu Qing. But Shang's foundation was much deeper than theirs, having cultivated for millions of epochs in the upper stream spacetimes, plus the opportunities given by Realm King. Reaching 8th tribulation levels would not have been difficult. What a pity. He stayed behind for their sake. Back then, he took so many people away, leaving Qishan Temple without any powerful beings to face the Temple of World Annihilation. If Shang also left, Qishan Temple would have no leader. The 4 temple masters were all puppets, without room for growth, not cultivators, and would eventually decline. Cultivators grew stronger. They grew weaker. Passing through the rapid river, Jian Wushuang finally saw the appearance of the lower stream spacetime. 100 tributaries spread in all directions. Incredibly magnificent. Compared to the middle stream, the lower stream had a larger space. But it was also more desolate. The tributaries were much smaller. The living space was also smaller. But the overall space was the largest. 10 times larger than the middle stream spacetime. 100 times larger than the upper stream spacetime. Having a large space was actually not good. It made the coverage of origin source power thinner. The lower stream spacetime started slowly for this reason. The upper stream spacetime with smaller space had much stronger origin source power. There was actually a way to improve, which was to refine the origin source of the lower stream spacetime. But this was too difficult. Even a universe god couldn't do it. Let alone refining hundreds of spacetime rivers, even refining one was hard. With that effort, it was better to light up his own universe. Jian Wushuang wouldn't waste time on such foolish things. Not to mention Realm King willing to part with it, even if it came with treasures, he wouldn't want it. Refining the lower stream spacetime into his own origin source Dao Arena would enhance his overall strength. This had precedence. The northern spacetime didn't have it, but other spacetimes did. It was a special existence, a super strong universe god. Then he refined the origin source of his own spacetime, reaching an unfathomable level of power, an absolute strongman in the starry sky. He heard about this from Weiss. It was too far from him. Brother Wushuang? Swish! The pyramid sensed his and Huiqing's aura and flew over on its own. Wu Zuo was the first to step out. Seeing that he and Huiqing were unharmed, he breathed a sigh of relief. Why did you stop here? Sigh, don't mention it. Go take a look up ahead. Wu Zuo sighed and pointed forward. You'll understand once you see it. Jian Wushuang's figure flickered and he arrived at the spot Wu Zuo indicated in an instant. It was the barrier of the downstream spacetime. Passing through it would lead to the downstream. He was just one step away from his home world. But when he saw the barrier, he was stunned. The barrier, originally condensed from spacetime, had turned black. The gate of death? Jian Wushuang immediately thought of a mystical phenomenon he had heard about. A barrier representing death. Passing through it would lead to demise. Wu Zuo must have known this, or he would have already fallen for it. A child's game. Miashang actually tried to use this to trap me. It seems he isn't well prepared. He was only slightly surprised and didn't care much. The gate of death sounded terrifying. But it was actually nothing much. If one passed through recklessly, their life force would be devoured. The weak would fall directly. Those below the 7 tribulations realm would experience life withering, but it wouldn't affect divine power. If Wu Zuo and the others had passed through recklessly, the pyramid would have shielded them, and they wouldn't be harmed. Even without the pyramid, passing through would at most result in the loss of some life force and being tainted by the power of death. This would be more troublesome, requiring careful removal. A single misstep could harm one's origin source. Wu Zuo couldn't be certain about this, so he had stopped, mainly wanting to wait for Jian Wushuang to arrive. This way he could feel more at ease. Is he underestimating us? Or is he trying to cover something up? Jian Wushuang frowned, unable to see through Miashang for a moment. It seemed he had never seen through him. The gate of death might work against universe masters below the 7 tribulations realm, but it was far from enough to trap him. What do you mean? Wu Zuo, who had followed, was somewhat puzzled and looked at him in surprise. Swish! Jian Wushuang casually parted the barrier and said indifferently, Nothing. Just go ahead. We've been waiting for you to say that. Wu Zuo didn't hesitate and stepped in directly. At this moment, everyone inside the pyramid came out. They couldn't sit still as they were about to enter the downstream spacetime. Swish! Everyone entered one by one, just like when they entered the upstream spacetime. Only this time they stood together. Whoosh! The first breath of air from the downstream spacetime made everyone savor it. I'm back! Wu Zuo couldn't help but shout excitedly, startling everyone. Wu Yin said grumpily, You're back! So what? Why shout so loudly? What? Wu Zuo turned and glared at Wu Tian. We've traveled such a long way. Can't I shout now that we're back? Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing ignored the two others, instead using their mind power to investigate the entire downstream area. With the naked eye, nothing could be seen. Only with mind power could the current situation be clearly observed. The entire downstream spacetime was shrouded in a black fog. The scent of death. The black fog moved with the wind. The wind carries a chill. Jian Wushuang reached out to grasp it, but it had already dissipated. He turned to look at the pyramid. Babata. How long will it take to reach Qishan Temple? And is the journey smooth? He had just detected Qishan Temple with his thought power, and it was still in its original position without any changes. However, there was no inheritor of Qishan Temple outside the original universe. It seemed they had already retreated to a single location. Inside the pyramid, Babata flew out, hovering in midair, respectfully saying, "Master, the distance to Qishan Temple will take the pyramid 1 era. There are no obstacles along the way, only cultivators below the 7 tribulations realm, so there is no danger." Too slow. Jian Wushuang shook his head. There was no way. The downstream was too vast. Even at the pyramid's speed, it would take an era. However, one advantage over the mid and upper reaches was that one could traverse freely. The downstream spacetime was large, but the origin source was weak. Space and time were also relatively weak. They could be freely altered. Of course, it depended on who was altering them. Hiss! Everyone was incredibly astonished as they looked at Jian Wushuang. The others still didn't know about the matters of the divine domain. Seeing him unleash divine power exceeding 20 million, achieving the ability to alter spacetime, they couldn't help but gasp. They thought Jian Wushuang had been hiding too deeply, never revealing his power before. Just now, that was divine power exceeding 20 million. Wu's voice trembled, overwhelmed by Jian Wushuang's strength. The others felt the same. Guangying and Gu Qianluo's faces turned pale. They originally thought the gap had narrowed, at least reaching the same realm as 7th Tribulation Universe Masters. But now the gap seemed even larger. Their divine power hadn't even surpassed 10 million. Jian Wushuang had directly exceeded 20 million. Wu Tian couldn't help but swallow hard, his breath taken away by Jian Wushuang's strength. "What are you all standing around for? Come in." Hearing his call, everyone snapped back to reality and quickly followed him inside. Originally, Jian Wushuang intended to be low-key and fly slowly. But now that he was in the downstream spacetime, he couldn't wait to see the current situation of Qishan Temple, so he didn't hide anything and directly altered spacetime, arriving outside Qishan Temple in one step. At the same time, he also revealed the divine domain. Wow! When everyone reappeared, they were already at the familiar Qishan Temple. The intersection of the Great Sea region and the Tongtian Buddha realm, Great Wilderness. Qishan Temple was located here, remembering the past. Once upon a time, the winds and clouds surged. He and Hu Qing were pursued by millions of troops. In the midst of the army, Jian Wushuang fought from the north to the south, escaping the encirclement with Hu Qing. Because of a piece of Bodhi heartwood, he stepped into the ranks of heart power cultivators and awakened the journey of the starry sky, mastering the extreme Tao. Later, he broke through to the level of Grand Yen Immortal, and Hu Qing also advanced to the 9 revolutions. They each had their own paths. Now they were starting anew. Looking back, it was yesterday. This departure had cost them much. The original universe had changed a lot too, especially around Qishan Temple. Due to its proximity to Qishan Temple, and the threat of the Demon Lord, the Great Domain was gone. The Tongtian Buddha realm was also gone. All around was empty. Deep in the Great Sea region, the place that held all Jian Wushuang's memories had also disappeared. It was everything he once had. Now there was nothing left. Further away, there were only war fortresses, countless armies of cultivators, eyeing Qishan Temple covetously. These cultivators were all native to the downstream. After entering the downstream spacetime, he discovered that hundreds of spacetime paths had been occupied by the Temple of World Annihilation. Naturally, they turned all the practitioners in the downstream spacetime into their own minions. It was quite laughable. These practitioners, under the banner of exterminating foreign practitioners, besieged Qixin Temple. Little did they know, it was the Temple of World Annihilation that would truly destroy the world. From a great distance, he could feel the power of death emanating from the Temple of World Annihilation, interfering with the origin source of the entire downstream spacetime, continuously eroding the entire downstream origin source. This was a cancer. Just as everyone was reminiscing, an angry shout came from afar. The strong ones of Qixin Temple have come out. Follow me to kill the traitors. Buzz. In an instant, a squad of practitioners charged in this direction. A 10-person team, 1 at the second tribulation level and 9 at the peak. These people were all practitioners from the downstream spacetimes, even from the original universe. Now they were going to attack Jian Wushuang and his companions. A nameless fury surged up. Jian Wushuang's eyes widened with anger. And with a single glance, time and space stood still. The entire void began to perish. Those practitioners charging forward did not notice that their bodies were disappearing. It was not until they completely lost consciousness that they realized they had fallen. Boom! The frozen space shattered instantly. At the edge of the void, a gigantic face appeared. He glanced at everyone and finally looked at Jian Wushuang. You finally returned. I've been waiting. Facing each other from a distance. The clash of auras. Repeated probing pushed both sides' battle intent to the peak. The person most interested in Jian Wushuang was none other than Miesheng. Don't rush. Take your time. Miesheng's voice echoed through the entire spacetime. The day you return is the day my Temple of World Annihilation launches a full attack on Qixin Temple. If you still act like a coward as before, then stay hidden in Qixin Temple forever and never come out. This time, Jian Wushuang did not avoid it. He stared straight at Miesheng and shouted loudly, I will be waiting for you. At this moment, the grand curtain rose. Zhenling in Qixin Temple couldn't believe that Jian Wushuang and the others had returned. Familiar figures brought tears to his eyes. How many years had it been? Epoch after epoch passed, and he was about to give up. Fan Tianfeng, who returned first, had fallen for many years, and he thought the others would soon follow. But he feared they would follow in Fan Tianfeng's footsteps. His heart was always conflicted. Now, seeing Jian Wushuang confronting Miesheng head-on, he felt reassured. He had waited too long for this moment. Jian Wushuang was curious why Miesheng was afraid of him hiding. Back then, hiding in Qixin Temple was due to his lack of strength. At that time, Miesheng had just awakened and wasn't that powerful either. So many years had passed. Why was Miesheng still afraid of him hiding? Was Qixin Temple really that strong? Could it block Miesheng? He was somewhat uncertain and needed to ask the true spirits. Miesheng retreated. Zhenling appeared. Thinking of the farewell scene back then, how similar it was to now. 1,000 bones paved the way for one general's success. The true spirit did not believe it. Jian Wushuang did not believe it either. This time, they had returned almost intact. If it weren't for Fan Tianfeng's private return and Zhen Wuyang's many changes in the Wanlu divine tree, making him reluctant to return, he could have brought everyone back. But now it was enough. They returned after learning, vowing to become dragon-slaying youths. Have you returned? Upon their meeting, Zhenling was not as emotional as one might have expected, only feeling a bittersweetness. Seeing Jian Wushuang and the others return alive, he was very happy. This was the greatest support in his heart over the years. As long as Jian Wushuang and the others did not return, he had hope. We have returned, everyone said in unison. Zhenling wanted to smile, but his face was covered in tears. In a hoarse voice, he said, It's good to have you back. It's good to have you back. Let's go home. The word home made everyone sigh with emotion. In the upstream spacetimes, they had never felt a sense of belonging. At this moment, this place was home. Jian Wushuang's former home could not be defended. Now only Qixin Temple remained. The gates of Qixin Temple opened wide. Everyone followed Zhenling back to the most familiar place. The 4 great secret realms had changed a lot. There were more people and more strong individuals. Originally, Qixin Temple and the Temple of World Annihilation had been evenly matched. Later, the front lines kept shrinking until they eventually merged into one. everyone entered Qixin Temple. Even so, not everyone was brought in. After entering this special treasure of Qixin Temple, Universe Masters could no longer improve. Fortunately, the Universe Masters of the past had moved the entire universe into Qixin Temple. Otherwise, outside, they would have been destroyed by the experts of the Temple of World Annihilation. Grave God Mountain. Jinling led them first to Grave God Mountain, the place where they had left. In front of the Grave God Monument, just like before, everyone offered incense and worshipped. I knew you would come back, and finally, today has come. After regaining his composure, Jinling restrained his excitement and said, "Do you know how many years I have waited for this day?" He turned to look at everyone, speaking word by word. "I have waited for 5 million epochs, just for today, to sound the horn of counterattack." With a wave of his hand, Jinling made a huge map appear in front of everyone. "Look here." He pointed to a red mark and said, "This is the location of the Temple of World Annihilation." Around the red mark, there were many dark red marks, clearly large war fortresses waiting for them to clear. When Fan Tianfeng returned, I was very happy, pointing it out to her. But unfortunately, she never came back. Jinling sighed. She never returned and died in battle. I don't want you to follow in her footsteps either. Jinling shook his head. This time we must be fully prepared. It's also time to reveal all the secrets of Qixin Temple to you, because this is the last chance. Jian Wushuang and the others were Qixin Temple's greatest support. It was time for Jinling to let go. He turned to look at everyone, recounting the past and present of Qixin Temple. Qixin. From the moment of his fall, he began to refine the origin source of Qixin Temple. Why did he refine it? Everyone knew it was to make Qixin's legacy great again. But in fact, there was another reason: to guard against one person. Mieshang. Qixin cooperated with Mieshang. This was true. Over the years, Jinling had also gleaned useful information. But why guard against him? If they were partners, why still guard against Mieshang, even creating a Jinling clone avatar? An avatar with a different personality and future layout from Qixin's. Wasn't this creating trouble for oneself? Jinling had even doubted himself. He almost defected to Mieshang. But he got his answer from the Heart Demon. The Heart Demon captured by Jian Wushuang had changed everything. Qixin. One body, not one person. Mind and spirit were not unified. This was the reason for Qixin's tribulation failure. Everyone knew people had two sides, but no one could separate the two sides. But Qixin did it. He cut out his greedy side, which was the path of devouring. He left his benevolent side to Qixin Temple. He regarded Qixin Temple as his fallback. That was why he guarded against Mieshang. To the extent that even though Mieshang had reached this point, he still could not enter Qixin Temple. On the other hand, collaborating with Mieshang was for his own path of devouring. Even though they were separated, he never gave up. The three great demons, Shanjun, Gujun, and Emojun, they could still merge again. This was his collaboration with Mieshang. Mieshang left with Shanjun and the others back then because of this reason. Betting on both sides. Cunning. Too cunning. For Qixin, it didn't matter who won. After all, in the end, he was the biggest winner. If Mieshang succeeded and mastered reincarnation, Qixin could fully resurrect. If Jinling won, then he would continue his fallback, and Qixin Temple would definitely be great again. The most crucial point was that he knew Mieshang was the god of death. Then the one who defeated Mieshang would be the god of life. Death devours life, forging reincarnation. The end of life leads to death, which can also forge reincarnation. Always winning. Simply winning big. Everyone listening nodded in agreement. Truly, my eyes are opened again. Wuxia couldn't help but exclaim, I didn't expect Master to calculate so perfectly, truly admirable. Jinling smugly smiled. You need to see who it is. Otherwise, how could I be so smart? I inherited Qixin's wisdom, unlike the three great demons, each foolish, now all. He was speaking with enthusiasm but thought of Jian Wushuang's relationship with Shanjun, so he didn't say more. What about the strength of the Temple of World Annihilation? Jian Wushuang didn't care about this and instead asked about the Temple of World Annihilation. As for Qixin, he had already guessed most of it, so listening now was the same as not listening. The only thing that surprised him was that Qixin could single-handedly guard against Mieshang. Was this still a half-step 8th tribulation realm? Able to block a true god of starry sky? Simply unbelievable. There must be an unspeakable secret, but unfortunately, Jinling didn't know. He was really curious about how to restrain a starry sky god. Hearing his question, Jinling beckoned everyone to change locations to talk. It was no different from before, still at the top of the Grave God Mountain. In the cloud-viewing pavilion, everyone took their seats. Swoosh! As soon as they sat down, a familiar figure descended, accompanied by an unfamiliar woman. Shang! Jian Wushuang stood up, smiling. Dongsheng and Wan Yan also stood up. They were all old acquaintances. Long time no see. Hu Qing also stood up to welcome them. Wu Zua, however, was a bit arrogant, looking at Shang, then at the unfamiliar woman beside Shang, surprised. This fellow Taoist is so powerful. I haven't seen her before. Could she be a second-generation inheritor? Ahem. Jinling cleared his throat. If it weren't for the fact that Wu Zua had just returned, he would have slapped the back of his head. Holding back his thoughts, he said calmly, Shang, why don't you introduce her first? After millions of epochs, Shang had become more and more reserved. He had always been like this, and now after so many years he hadn't changed at all, still so calm and steady. No wonder he was the top figure in Qixin Temple over these years. He was also a leader among practitioners, a pride among inheritors. Seeing Jian Wushuang and the others return, his usual demeanor changed, his eyes showed excitement, but he suppressed it and said solemnly, She is Luo, my Taoist companion, and the Hall Master of the Vermilion Bird Hall. Luo, Hall Master of the Vermilion Bird Hall. Taoist companion. Jian Wushuang could see through her strength at a glance. A peak 7th tribulation realm powerhouse. Very young. Through a trace of causality, he saw her entire life. Actually, her cultivation time was not shorter than theirs. She came from another space-time, when Qixin Temple expanded, occupying several tributaries. Shang met Luo during that time. At that time, Luo was already a universe master. She first competed with Shang, and later, they developed feelings through their paths and got together. Greetings to all. Luo gently bowed, revealing a smile. Her appearance was stunning. Upon seeing this scene, Wan Yan thought of his own companion, feeling a chill in his heart. I am Jian Wushuang. Greetings, sister-in-law. I am from the original universe. Dongsheng. I am from the original universe. Wan Yan. I am from the Tongtian Buddha realm. Hu Qing. Only they were so courteous. The rest just announced their names. After getting to know each other, Jinling gave a signal to the envoy, indicating that they could begin. About the Qixin Temple. The envoy began narrating about Qixin Temple. From the time they had just left until the present, everything was recounted. When Jian Wushuang and the others had just left, the number of strong members in Qixin Temple was similar to that of the Mieshang Temple. But at that time, Qixin Temple had already developed for an era. Mieshang Temple had just started, yet it could match Qixin Temple. Later, the gap widened. While Qixin Temple was still fighting for those resource points, the strong members of Mieshang Temple were in seclusion, cultivating. The number of strong members almost doubled every era. The biggest gap appeared when the Mo Jun emerged, a 6th tribulation level strong member. He almost destroyed all the sect forces outside Qixin Temple. Fortunately, the envoy's breakthrough was fast. From 1st tribulation to 6th tribulation, it only took several eras. This surpassed everyone. It also made everyone look up to the envoy once more, no longer so arrogant. They all had the opportunities granted by the Realm King. The envoy, however, fought for it with his life. Mo Jun, the envoy sighed deeply. When the Mo Jun descended, the following words were heavy. Even Wu Tian showed respect. That battle back then, many people fell. Many of them were their friends, such as Ji Chaoyang. Ji Chaoyang had just become a universe master and sacrificed himself to cover the emperor's retreat. He was torn apart by the Mo Jun, leaving not even a corpse. Hu Qing, upon hearing this, clasped his hands together and silently recited Buddhist scriptures for Ji Chaoyang. He also recalled the days and nights spent with him. The Mo Jun broke free from the suppression of the original universe, making the strength of Mieshang Temple completely surpass Qishan Temple. Later, it was barely blocked by the envoy. The front lines were forced to shrink continuously, until it shrunk within Qishan Temple. What is the Mo Jun's strength now? He saw that both the envoy and Luo were universe masters at the 7th tribulation level, and Jinling also considered the two as successors, their strength not weak. Even this couldn't stop the Mo Jun? It didn't make sense. Could it be that the Mo Jun had merged with Shan Jun? Shang saw Jian Wushuang's puzzlement and explained, "The most terrifying enemies of Mieshang Temple are not the Mo Jun, but Broly and Jiang Shang. These two were like the Shang and Luo of Qishan Temple. But their strength was even greater. They had already reached the level of half-step 8th tribulation. Moreover, Mieshang Temple had 10 demon generals, each with top-level 7th tribulation combat power. In contrast, Qishan Temple had only 2 universe masters at the 7th tribulation level. Not even a few universe masters at the 6th tribulation level. The disparity was simply too great. However, to Jian Wushuang and his companions, those so-called experts of the Temple of World Annihilation were not worth mentioning. A mere 7th tribulation, not even an 8th tribulation among them. There was no need for Jian Wushuang to make a move. Any one of them could easily crush the entire Qishan Temple. Jian Wushuang was truly worried about Mieshang. He had no interest in these minions. No 8th tribulation? Wu's were frowned and sighed. I thought the Temple of World Annihilation had some remarkable existence, but it turns out there isn't even an 8th tribulation. How boring! Seeing Wu's was annoying expression, Jian Wushuang and the others said nothing. It indeed was not what they had expected. Mieshang was a true god of starry sky, yet he hadn't cultivated even to the 8th tribulation level. It didn't make sense. Given a few million epochs, even a realm king could cultivate a group of 8th tribulation. Mieshang wasn't lacking in treasures or heritage. How could there not be an 8th tribulation? Jinling felt a bit embarrassed, as if they were being criticized for being rubbish, not even able to handle a 7th tribulation, let alone an 8th tribulation. Especially seeing the disappointed expressions on Wu Zhua and the others, he felt even more uncomfortable. I understand now, each of you possesses extraordinary skills, and you don't regard opponents below the 8th tribulation as a challenge, right? Jinling glanced at everyone, eagerly saying, "Tell me, how strong are you all now?" In fact, there was no need to ask. He could see the extraordinariness of everyone, especially Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, who were completely unreadable at least half-step 8th tribulation, perhaps even comparable to super experts of the 8th tribulation. Wu Zhua and the others were the same, each exuding the aura of a 7th tribulation, with divine power fluctuations above 2 million. Shang and Luo were also curious about everyone. Both of them were universe masters of the 7th tribulation and could see the distinctiveness of everyone. Ahem! Wu Zhua cleared his throat and said nonchalantly, "Not much. Just gained some heritage and became a universe master of the 7th tribulation. It's quite embarrassing." Shang didn't even go to the upper stream spacetimes, but still became a universe master of the 7th tribulation, making us seem like freeloaders. Wu Zhua, you're too modest. Although we are all universe masters of the 7th tribulation, I can see the difference in divine power. Shang was very humble, but seeing the calm expressions of everyone, he felt assured. This time they were really going to succeed. The rescue troops they had awaited for countless years had finally arrived. Eradicating the Temple of World Annihilation was urgent. Luo was also very curious. She could see that everyone was a universe master of the 7th tribulation, but their divine bodies were inscrutable, each seeming like an insurmountable mountain. Although they were at the same level, it felt vastly different. Especially Wu Zhua and Wu Tian. Just seeing them was like looking at an abyss. As for Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, They had reached the pinnacle of restraint, exuding an extraordinary aura without any trace of divine power. Zhenling was the same. Although he was the master of the Qixin Temple, he could at most see that Wu Zua and Wu Tian had extraordinary divine power, far stronger than any universe master of the seventh tribulation he had seen. But he couldn't discern anything from Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. Either they were far beyond him, or they had cultivated some secret method to conceal their aura. All right, let's not talk about this for now. Your return is a great blessing for our Qixin Temple. Today we won't discuss Miesheng. I have already asked Long Yi to prepare a banquet. We must celebrate. Zhenling felt an unprecedented sense of relief, and his complexion improved significantly. It had been many years since he had felt this way. Although the threat of Miesheng remained, it wouldn't make a difference in a day or two. Jian Wushuang nodded in agreement, saying, I wonder how many familiar faces from the past are still around. Not many of your batch of inheritors are left. Zhenling's eyes gleamed. The banquet was held in the heavenly realm, not at the Tomb God Mountain. That place was not suitable for a welcoming party. Upon returning to the heavenly realm, looking around, everything had changed drastically. The Yuanyang Palace still stood, but the people were gone. The current Yuanyang Palace had surpassed the 4 halls, becoming the foremost force in the Qixin Temple. Even the inheritors of Grave God Mountain couldn't compare, because the threshold for inheritors had been raised significantly, producing many experts, but their numbers were few. Yuanyang Palace, however, followed the principle of teaching without discrimination, recruiting disciples widely in the lower spacetime and producing many tribulation realm experts. The current palace master was Luo. Luo had also joined Yuanyang Palace back then. Shang was the leader of Grave God Mountain and also the leader of the entire Qixin Temple. As for the 4 halls, their structure had long been disrupted. The former puppet hall masters had all retired to the background, handling some trivial matters. The current 4 hall masters were all universe masters at the 6th tribulation level. Even the hall masters of Yuanyang Palace were at the 6th tribulation level. The group ascended to Yuanyang Island and entered the main hall. On both sides, various figures could be seen. Some were familiar, but most were strangers. After all, only a single epoch had passed initially. But then came the sedimentation of millions of epochs. Among the familiar figures, most were ordinary tribulation realm practitioners, and some were emperors. After the cleansing of millions of epochs, universe masters had emerged, along with those who had fallen from grace. When they saw Jian Wushuang and others return like heroes, their eyes gleamed with light. A beam of light shone on the face of the first-generation inheritor. It proved they had experienced those years. They were inheritors who had fought their way up from the primordial star. Having gone through various adventures, the 4 great secret realms, and the threat of the Temple of World Annihilation. These experiences had honed the light on their bodies. Yet this light now appeared on Jian Wushuang and the others. If only Wan Xing were still alive, how great it would be! A despondent woman, upon seeing the brilliance of Jian Wushuang and the others, thought of Wan Xing, who had once stood alongside them. Unfortunately, he had already fallen. Besides these disheartened old inheritors, there were also some young inheritors with confusion or resentment, even second-generation inheritors. They did not hold Jian Wushuang and the others in high regard. Are these the people that Lord Zhenling and others talk about? A strong person among the 4 halls couldn't help but mutter softly, Why do I feel their divine power is quite average? No, they are suppressing their divine power. The weakest among them is at the 7th tribulation level, comparable to the palace master. No wonder Lord Zhenling has waited so long and kept talking about them. They are indeed extraordinary. Some young inheritors noticed the exceptional nature of Jian Wushuang and the others. The invisible pressure they exuded was far beyond ordinary strong ones. At the upper part of the hall, the 6 palace masters of Yuanyang Palace and the 4 hall masters sat on either side. Each one was a super-strong universe master at the 6th tribulation level. They were comparable to the 10 demon generals of the Temple of World Annihilation.